And we'll call this meeting to order here.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, and Mr. Braden is not on the screen, but he's with us, correct? All right. So he's not online. Well, he's a kind of an important dude today, so we really do need to wait for Mr. Braden. I'd hate to start this without him.
Mayor, can you advise, is this being televised tonight?
Yes, it is. It's a streamed public meeting, and hopefully we won't have the same trouble that our citizens had last night streaming. My wife even talked about how it kept dropping the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties as we speak. Well, Rodney's late. How would you like to proceed? Should we just sit tight until we can get him online, or? Folks, sorry for the delay. COVID-19, technology, drama. Hopefully we'll resolve it here. We'll get Councilman Braden online. As soon as we do, we'll start the proceedings. In the meantime, I'm going to eat a sandwich. Proceeding now. So, Mr. Marley, would you like to lead us in the pledge? All right. We're having a special meeting, Destin City Council, October 6th. And first up, we're going to have, I guess under new business, the City of Destin Utility Undergrounding Project Management RFQ 20-03-CD. And we're going to have presentations from the three companies that have responded to the RFQ. And so what we'll do is we'll start here first with CPWG Madrid Engineering Group. So come on up and you can hit the red button and announce your company and take it away.
He's hit it, okay. I was holding it. Good evening again. My name's Corey Carnes. I'm with CPWG Madrid. I'll be leading our presentation tonight. First off, I want to introduce our CEO, who has a few things to say about our company, Mr. Steve Tart.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you all. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to potentially work with you all in the future on this very important project. If you go to the next slide. So basically, this is just the table of contents of what we're going to provide you all tonight for information to think about when you sit down at the end of this and decide which firm that you think you want to work with moving forward. Next slide. So this is important to me. We started in 2004, CPWG. Madrid actually started in 1992. We merged back in November 2019. But in 2018, we went through a business model change, and one of the things we did was develop core values. It was interesting. I got a copy of your agenda. I see you guys have core values also. And it's core values are tremendous to us. We hire around them, we fire around them, we pick clients around them, we operate daily on those. And you can see ours: clients first, commitment to excellence, manage ingenuity through teamwork, family is the source of strength, which is particularly important to me. I have 5 children, 22 to 30, and so it's very important to me. And also to have that within our organization with the families that work for us. You also see here meaningful community involvement and then exceptional communication. I will say that if we are lucky to work with you folks on this and we're involved in this project, there will be meaningful community involvement from us, as well as an opportunity for some local jobs to be with us or around us with this project. I think one of the other things to notice is that 70% of our customers are repeat. And of course, we have some size where we're 100 plus employees. Next slide, please. This slide is basically just kind of lays out who we are in terms of overall through the company, the amount of people we have. I actually found an idea of this clip. The folks in here are our employees, or W-2 employees that work for us, and we had our graphics department put those together. So we're in favor of diverse workforce, although tonight in the electrical side it's not as diverse as normal, but our company is very diverse. We're very proud of that fact. And the next slide. One of the things you're going to get tonight, if nothing else, is you're going to see that we feel like we have some advantages to provide you guys. Here, we're experts at working with cities and county governments. As you saw, we've got 30 plus continuing contracts among many other contracts with cities and counties. We work with DOT. We're very schedule and results driven, super important. We also have relevant knowledge of distribution facilities, undergrounding, making that happen. We have great local relationships. We have offices in Chipley. We have offices in Calhoun County. So we have a local presence besides the other offices throughout the state. And then we have the extensive resources and the direct experience to help you guys get the project. Generally, we say we get projects out of the ground. Well, this project we want to get in the ground. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tommy Barfield.
Thank you, Steve. And as Steve said, my name's Tommy Barfield, and under a prior role, I actually worked for the Florida Department of Transportation, as the district secretary. And I did have an opportunity to work on a number of initiatives to look at underground utilities on the 98 corridor. I know Senator Gates was a real help in leading that initiative. And again, I'm really excited about the city of Destin looking at the possibility of doing that moving forward. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done up to this point, but I also wanted to say that I hope that this would be a catalyst for all the other cities and counties as we go forward, to try and make this a success and show them how we can actually accomplish this to everyone's advantage. And with that, I want to introduce our team real quick. The first one I want to introduce is Matt Speed. He's one of our senior designers. Matt has about 16 years of utility industry, and before joining CPWG Madrid, he actually worked for Duke Energy. The second I want to introduce is one of our senior engineers, David Green. David has worked in the electrical engineering and project management and for the last 12 years, and has a total of 25 years experience in utility coordination. And I also want to introduce Dan Hart. Dan is actually the principal in charge that we've got proposed on this contract. Dan has 23 years in design and construction industry, and Dan is the person who will be in charge of making sure that our projects are on time and within budget. So he would be a very important person to our team. And then also, I want to mention a couple of the subs consultants that we've added to our team. I'm very proud of our team that we put together. I want to introduce Lynn Cherry. She's actually owner of Carpe Diem Community Solutions, public involvement company. Lynn has over 35 years of service in the public involvement and 17 years of that owning her own business. And I also wanted to mention Jimmy Smith. He is with Soteris Engineering and Consultants Construction Services. He's the actual owner of that company, And Jimmy and I worked together at the Florida DOT. Jimmy was there for about 12 years, and he's been on the private side of engineering for about the last 8 years, and 5 years as the owner of the Soteris company. So, and we've asked Jimmy to join it to be one of our CEI experts, construction engineering inspection experts, as well as working with the relationships within DOT. So I just want to mention that. And then the last one I want to mention is, introduce to you is Jason Alderman. Jason is actually the Assistant Client Service Manager for this contract. Jason has worked 15 years with the Florida Department of Transportation as a transportation planner, project manager, and intergovernmental liaison. Jason has a total of 25 years' experience working with local municipalities, a great asset to our company as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening to you, all of you, and thank you, all your members, for having us here tonight. We're excited to be a part of this, and like Tommy, I'm a lifelong resident of Northwest Florida, and through the years, my family and I have enjoyed Destin and all it has to offer many, many times through the years, and so, you know, we have some skin in the game here, and I recognize a lot of your faces from my DOT days, and look forward to hopefully working with you guys moving forward. But I do have the pleasure tonight to highlight for you the depth of our bench relating to our in-house staff. You can see on this slide, and go ahead and move forward to the next slide, please. Our team offers both professional and support staff at a great level on an in-house basis, and we're performing these services successfully all over the state. And we have the horsepower to effectively and efficiently turn your vision for this thing into your legacy. And that's something that we realize, that this is a legacy project. And again, going back to my family, as we come down here, I think it would be pretty cool to be, you know, for that to be part of my legacy too, to be, you know, to have some little part in turning your vision into, you know, into what Destin really could be. And so with that, I wanted to take just a moment to introduce our project manager, Corey Carnes. Corey is a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida. Corey has 10 plus years actually of power engineering service in the state of Florida, working both on the private consultant side and for utility companies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Corey.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening again. Again, my name's Corey Carnes. Just to kind of expand on my background, I came fresh out of college into the utility world. I was into a consulting group for Duke Energy specifically, moved into working for Tampa Electric, worked directly with Tampa Electric for a couple years. I actually went into transmission initially, and then went back down to large capital projects and distribution. Went from there onto a larger civil engineering firm, KCI Technologies, and managed all their major projects, any capital projects they had. So I've been exposed to any and all of the state in Florida, the large providers. I believe that's a huge benefit here by itself. And then, you know, but when you really look at our team coming to CPWG Madrid, it was really a challenge. I was looking for the next challenge in the book, and in my head, undergrounding was always the more difficult path on the utility side. It didn't matter what you were doing. Even the more brilliant minds had challenges with you know, such an overbearing, ominous task, you would think. I got a chance to work on several large projects in my time, and now with CPWG, they've since, in the past 5 years, with part of my time there, I've been managing directly 8 communities, basically. We've been managing all at the same time. Majority of them are coastal communities. Definitely want to point that fact out. We manage from, next slide please. We manage from, in the next slide you'll see, we've managed these coastal communities all at the same time over the past 5 years. All the way from concept through design, all the planning stages, we were the actual EOR on these jobs. We We actually constructed as well, and we're inspecting as a field engineer also. Please go to the next slide. Next slide, please. These projects from these 8 communities all at the same time over the past 4 years were totaling $64 million. Next slide, please. And I want to hit on, again, these were coastal communities. They were all large underground conversion opportunities that we very proud of, went very successfully, delivered on time and under budget. And the fact is, we were building it. We saw the costs incurred, the risk incurred. We were there building it and inspecting it at the same time. So, next slide, please. How do we do that? We delivered those projects by understanding the life cycle. We understood these projects from concept. We understood and listened to the input of our client, as we will with Destin. We want to strive for your goals. Someone told me a story recently. We're not going to do a $250,000, be an architect and do a $250,000 design that you only have budgeted for $50,000. We're going to deliver you what you expect, and we're going to do that by understanding setting goals, understanding the delivery times, understanding the milestones, and creating a consistent expectation for you. Continue next slide. What you'll see here is every overhead and underground conversion can be broken down really into 3 major ticket items. That's, again, facilities. Who's there? What are we doing with them? What are we moving? Where's our target scope? The conversion. What is the process? How are we stepping through this? Our history has shown we've been successful at putting these pieces together and then, again, providing them to the stakeholders, the folks that need to see them. They're all looking at them from a different standpoint. They all have different mapping systems. They all have different experience levels. We liaison between all of them. We've done that successfully, and we continue to do that successfully in communities such as your own. So next slide, please. Again, how do we do that? How do we successfully continue over the past 5 years with everybody? We've learned a balance. We've learned a balance of what they need, what the municipal needs, what Destin will need, what your stakeholders will need. If we start at the bottom, data, if we miss something in the initial data gathering, the concept part, it will trickle through the whole effect. Our goal is not just to jump through and get to a cost. We're going to put the work in, put the time in, and get you the right answer so you can make the decision you need based on your costs, your strengths, and your schedule. Please, next slide. Another big deal, too, is relationships. If I don't know the answer based on my experience, I know several folks that do. I've been in the state of Florida. We've trickled from the largest levels of utility. Our team has taken on all the 8 beach communities and been very successful. We understand the relationships and what it takes. Next slide, please. I'd like to now introduce another major component, public outreach. We have a local provider, Lynn Cherry, and she's going to speak on the topic.
Well, Carpe Diem, seize the day. We're ready to roll up our sleeves. Community solutions. We're ready, and we stand on ready to not only roll up our sleeves, but serve as your community liaison. Carpe Diem Community Solutions is the go-to public engagement firm for this district's Florida Department of Transportation, your Emerald Coast Regional Council, and serve with your team in the Okaloosa TPO. We've done many projects with your Okaloosa TPO for 15 years. We also serve as the go-to public engagement consulting firm for the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency out of the city of Tallahassee and Leon County. All that to say is we're a trusted agent to come into your communities and work with your citizens. Specifically, you see on this slide, Carpe Diem Community Solutions experiences within Okaloosa County. We've been in your community for years. Next slide. Diving a little bit deeper into that experience, you may recall I was here in 2015 and facilitated your CRA community workshops. When you held your 4 CRA workshops and talking about the vision, the needs, and how do we get there in the next several years as you visioned with your CRAs. On this slide, you see a cluster of all kinds of engagement tools, from your typical social media tools that the city already utilizes, tools like Nextdoor, and the old-fashioned tools like newspaper ads and U.S. mail. All that to demonstrate is we're ready to serve, support, and be an asset to your existing public engagement staff. And we want this project to say, they got this. We know the city. I live in Panama City. I grew up in Gulf Breeze, been in the Panhandle all my life. So again, Carpe Diem Community Solutions and this team is ready to serve as your community liaison. Thank you. Now give it back to Corey. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Lynn. So, solutions, what does that mean? I think of it as opportunities. Amongst our other extensive background in helping you through this project, it's opportunities to find within your investment. You're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money. You want to know not only where you can save money, but maybe where there's an opportunity to develop a marketing or economical benefit to the community. You know, not only is it storm hardening, but can we beautify it? Can we get the lighting in here to effectively help the environment? Can we reduce risk in all our efforts and our construction? Can we take liability and understand it? These are big keys and opportunities where CPWG Madrid has been in the middle of these conversations with our communities that we've worked with in the past. Our beach communities, we understand what you guys need, when you need it, and how we can get to it. And we'd love to share that. We understand the rules, the regulations, and everything that comes with what creates an effective and efficient and successful project. Next slide, please. Again, we do it, we're good at it, we're proud of it. Pick us. That's why we're standing here in front of you. We do undergrounding, and we love every minute of it. Next slide, please. The next few slides here you're going to see are underground conversion projects that we've worked on. This one here is Paso Grill. That is a video showing the overall underground conversion, not just of the electric and the communications, but responsible for all other utilities in the entire corridor, all the way from concept to build to inspection and completion. Next slide, please. Your next slide here is City of Winter Garden. We have not fully completed this, but we have just recently submitted our 100% plans. This project was a $17 million project with not just, again, electric and utility, the basic comm and communications. We were responsible for all utilities going in the ground here from start to finish. So again, this is one of those larger projects that I think fits the bill, just like our previous community project, our beach community projects, that is very similar and will mirror or continue to mirror our efforts and our ability. Next slide. This one here is another City of Groveland. Now this is more on the park side reconstruction. This was a $2.6 million park reconstruction, and again, we just completed this project. We have a vast ability. We're responsible for all the underground utility in this facility. So as you can see, everything from coastal communities, municipal work, that's our area, that's our expertise. Next slide, please. Again, here, I mentioned before, construction. We've done the construction. What you'll see here is some of the undergrounding efforts with our own folks in the trench doing the work themselves. Next slide, please. And again, I want to reiterate, we've worked in several different areas in municipal work. We've provided quality product. You'll see Archibald Park is one of our beach communities there. Next slide, please. I'd like to go ahead and let our CEO, Steve Tart, wrap this up.
Thank you. So Corey is our power division leader. And on the projects that he showed you, beyond just the underground, we actually, as he said, we did complete design. So all those, the two roadway projects were from the road base up. So we redid water, sewer, reclaimed, massive stormwater upgrades. We designed the roadway. We did safety measures on it. So they were very extensive. So it really is complete streets that we have the know-how and ability to do. And I know that was mentioned when you guys in the RFP itself, that you want to have some complete streets experience. We have that. We have landscape architects and planners and the whole cadre of individuals that do that work in another department. This slide here, so again, more the undergrounding advantage specifically. We have designed coastal systems. We have provided project management on undergrounding projects among many others. We have provided CEI, construction engineering inspection, particularly to undergrounding projects, particularly in coastal cities, which are very difficult. We have protected clients from enhancement. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but typically utilities try to expand their system or enhance their system in opportunities like this. It's very important for you all to understand that they have limits of what they should ask you to pay for. And so part of that is to us help you not be, to negotiate and mitigate that with utility companies. And we've done that on every project that we've been involved in. And then lastly, we have constructed projects. So we are absolutely good with being a program manager, helping you work through that and have other parties construct it. We have actually also done turnkey and constructed projects ourselves. So we have both sides. You know, we have the engineering side, but we also have the construction side. Now, if we don't construct, it's helpful because it's buildability reviews. Our construction folks can look at the plans and make decisions and help make plans that don't cost extra money. Next slide, please. This I just put together because it's kind of like, I feel like you guys are, you're going to make your decision tonight, so I wanted to basically flesh out some of the comparisons between the three firms. We are a licensed engineering firm in the state of Florida. We're also a licensed surveying company, another advantage for this project. We're also licensed landscape architects. So when we get into after the fact and designing what happens after, when the power companies come through or the construction happens, you have to do all the restoration. So it's important to have landscape architects to help lead that effort. We're licensed general contractors. I talked about the benefit of that. We have done telecom, electric, and cable undergrounding in Florida. We've done it in 6 coastal communities from 2015 to current. One of those projects will run through 2022. And that's a $13 million project they're working on now. We are a Florida-based company. We started and we operated out of Florida. On our side of the house, like I said, for CPWG, it was in 2004. For Madrid, it was 1992. And actually, Madrid is a certified minority business. We have established offices in the Panhandle, as I said. We've got the office in Chipley. We've got the office outside of Bluntstown. We own that facility in Bluntstown, so corporately, we're invested in the Panhandle. And I personally have recently bought property here in the Panhandle. So we're here to be here and to stay here. And then lastly, we have 7 offices throughout the state of Florida, amongst some others that we have up in the Midwest. Next slide, please. This is just, I wanted to throw in an extra recommendation. In the RFP, we asked for 2. And so David Green, who is here with us, went to the city of Indian Rocks Beach and asked the public service director if he would write a recommendation for us. And so we got this on September 30th, once we got notice that we were shortlisted for you folks to come. And so, it's a great reference. Obviously, we're not going to give you a bad reference, but on the undergrounding, we don't have bad references. But, we appreciate Dean doing this and just giving you guys extra comfort of the coastal community we're working in and how that goes. Next slide. So when we got the letter, basically there were kind of, in my mind, 4 questions that you asked us, or 4 areas to address, which was, could we do a project of this magnitude? Could we demonstrate the understanding of how to do this project and get this project in the ground? Do we have the ability or shown the experience to work with multiple utilities at one time? Well, we did that in 6 cities, 8 cities at the same time. Not all the same utilities. There were multiple utilities as they were spread around. And then lastly, the experience of the direct team members that will be here. So, not that I would do this at every presentation. I brought the majority of the team. I would not normally do this, but I thought it was important for the magnitude of your project and to demonstrate our commitment to you. And so to those 4 questions, I answered yes. I believe that through our presentation, through our RFP, hopefully through your questions and answers, we have satisfied that we do have the ability to do this project. And we're very excited to work with you and have that opportunity. And with that, I'll turn it back to Corey for questions. Thank you.
I'd like to open up.
All right. Council members, does anyone have any questions for Corey at this time after the presentation? Go ahead.
Guys, thank you for coming in. I'm Parker Destin. I'm a city councilman, and I've been sort of the go-to guy on trying to negotiate the franchise agreement and the undergrounding agreement with the city of Destin and Gulf Power for the last several years. And I appreciate you guys coming up and bidding on this project. I think our RFP, while it is one, I think it actually is a bit of two parts, which is important. And I think that you guys can probably meet it, but the real thing that we're going to have challenges with is the first phase is clearly the planning, the coordinating, and then there is the second part, which is the shovels, the dirt. And I think that you guys are prepared for both. I just wanted to, I think you hit it in the presentation, but I just wanted to double check to make sure that you guys feel competent that you can handle both, because it will be a tremendous amount of work once we get in a relationship with Gulf Power to coordinate all the moving parts, herd all the cats, because we've got a lot of different folks from a utility standpoint that, you know, it's going to be tough to keep all the ducks in a row and get everybody on the same sheet of music. So, you know, I know Tommy from his days at DOT. I've been on the Mid-Bay Bridge Authority, and I know that he probably has some existing relationships being in charge of District 3 with Gulf Power and Okaloosa Gas and many of the other utilities, so that gives me hope. But I just wanted to feel you out and how you felt from a preparation standpoint.
I'll tell you right now, we're in the middle of working with a local program manager, walking them through the steps and negotiating with Duke Energy at the moment. My background, I came working with Florida Power and Light, Duke Energy, Antico. I know all the systems they're involved in. I know how they need to see it. I know how to discuss with them. I can walk in and consult, and our team has the experience from the coordinating standpoint. So I think we're in the middle of those processes as we speak on the continued work we're doing in our other communities, and can stand here today and say, yes, we're ready for that approach. We're in the middle of an agreement right now with Duke Energy, so Gulf Power, we can definitely handle that.
Yeah, well, I'm excited that you came and that you gave your presentation. I know that this is going to be a long-term project. This is an ambitious project. I mean, we're going to be there's going to be many councils that you guys will be dealing with. I hope that that if selected, that you guys are in it for the long haul, and I appreciate you guys coming in. Thanks.
Got another question from Dr. Ramswell.
Thanks so much for coming in. I enjoyed the presentation. It was very thorough. Thank you. Two questions, and one builds off what Mr. Destin said. In terms of time frame, what are we looking at realistically for a start to finish?
So I know you guys hit 5 to 8 years. I'll be honest, most of the time frames depend on, specifically your point, the folks involved. I'll tell you right now, I've been doing it for 10 years, and you're doing it the right way. We're getting out in front. You're going to get the right folks in the room, and we're going to help you not have to extend those time frames. You know, usually those projects are a couple years at a time per phase. I mean, minimum just to construct, much less plan. You're a couple years at a time to plan. So, I mean, the 5 to 8 years is probably, I'll be honest, a little aggressive, but I think genuinely we can get it done because you have the right folks in the room, and we'll be those folks for you. So.
And I think some of that will depend on funding sources, if you guys are fully funded.
Good point, Steve. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So my second question then is, obviously, a lot of this work is going to be along 98, which is a major thoroughfare, major corridor. What sort of planning and ideas would you have for controlling the traffic, and how do you manage that? And have in any of your other projects, have you dealt with a major thoroughfare, essentially, such as we have here?
So Gulf Boulevard is where we're at right now. Our 8 communities, largely those coastal communities, we're Gulf Boulevard, which is way down St. Pete Beach, St. Pete area. That is a very intense area for tourists, and we go through every step from the beginning. We'll lay out plans and graphics to be able to walk you through, and then be able to walk your permitting agencies through before you even, you know, we're coordinating with the local community. We don't want, we've had folks come in with wanting their children not to be, their bus stop not to be impeded. We're managing speed bump locations that may help support the safety there. Every step of the way, we're going to listen and make sure we make suggestions and then when we hear concerns, that's how we will address them at each, visual stage, so you can see it. You won't just be like, trust me, it's good. We'll have visuals that will then go on to the state level to be able to verify safety and any concerns. I mean, Gulf Boulevard's a big area with tourists, so it's very similar.
Sure, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So Gulf Boulevard, State Road 699, so it's an FDOT roadway, just like 98. And some of the things with the coastal communities that they have just like you, so there's spring break. There are festivals that go on. And so what we did over the time is coordinate around all those activities with you to make sure that they were not as disruptive as they could be. If we were just kind of doing our thing, once we get into construction, we really have to manage around that and work with the city, work with the civic organizations, the various opportunities, and like I said, that go on. The other thing is the MOT has to be designed to FDOT standards. So it's not like we can just kind of flip it out here and do what we want. So we have to design to those standards. We have FDOT staff that's what they do. And so all of those things are done in that light. So very, very similar to what you have here.
Great, thank you all so much.
Looking up to the screen, Mr. Mitchell, would you like to ask a few questions? Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, sir, I would. Gentlemen, thank you. Very, very informative thing. I'm going to ask you, I'm not picking on you. We were given a worksheet that had 39 questions on it, some of which you answered. I picked out what I feel are 7 important ones, and I'm not going to be picking on your company. I plan on asking everybody tonight the same question. So here we go with the first one. Please tell us the availability of the lead and the other key personnel whom your company will assign to the city's underground project, first part over the next 2 years and the next over the next 4 years.
So if you flipped our availability slide, I don't know if that is, it has, it's probably the 5th or 6th. Just to be clear. So this, yeah, keep going, next one, there you go. So right there, we got a breakdown, oh. Oh yeah, there you go, technology. So there you have it, our percentage breakdown. This jumps to the top of my list. We're excited. This is a big project. This is a culmination of all our efforts and experience and work. So you'll notice mine 80%. We're coming local. We're going to dedicate resources locally. We're going to get local community involved and make sure that it's understood that even though those percentages there, understand you're first, and we're going to take care of you. If those folks need involved further, those percentages can go up real quick. So those aren't fixed. But Steve, did you have any other? Okay. Good.
Okay. All right. I'll move on to the next one, please. Please describe your understanding and what's involved in a city's underground project. I realize some of this may be duplicated. I just want you to answer the direct questions, please.
Yeah. So understanding the project is the electric facilities, the telecommunication, that of which is Gulf Power right now. There is Cox. There is also, oh yeah, we have my slide. Good job. Flip to my stakeholder. Some neighboring, and I'm not sure what thought's been given to it. There's some neighboring co-ops here that will be involved. They do interconnect and will be heavily initial review of the existing system to make sure we don't impact their interconnect. This is a good slide for, keep going, next, slide 18. There you go. So those will be the impacted project, the folks that we'll be working with regularly outside of your office. We will be focusing on those specific areas, but anybody affected is going to be part of the project. So our efforts are to underground the electric overhead and any of the joint users on the pole locations. That's in real simple terms.
All right, thank you. Next one. Although final decisions haven't been made, you should reasonably assume the City of Destin's underground project will require some bond financing. what experience do you have in supporting any bond financing efforts?
So I'm going to pass this one off to Steve.
So as you say, so what we have done is most communities like yourselves will hire a bond attorney. And the attorney will be the one that drives the show in terms of doing the bond financing, whether whether you find some additional state funding, potentially allocations or, revolving state funds, other type things. Money at this point is actually pretty cheap for a community to borrow. So we've had 3 of the communities actually, they had a penny for Pinellas where they got funds over an 8-year period. A lot of those went ahead and borrowed against that funding because of the price of money and to accelerate the project, so it's worked pretty well. But what we do is we provide the information necessary in terms of project costs, timing, those type of things to the bond attorney for him to use and take forward as he goes out to sequence and acquire the bonding.
Okay, thank you. My next one, has your company or any member of your team ever been involved in any litigation relating to underground projects, contracts relating to constructions or installation of underground facilities, or to the management of such underground projects?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Confirm
2 more quick.
CL? That's a no. Not that we're aware of yet. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, great, okay.
Yeah.
Next one. Has your company, any member of your team ever been removed from a project or told to stop work on a project by any client?
Not that I'm aware of. Steve,
Okay.
have we been? No, not.
Okay. And last one is, has your company ever been sued for breach of contract?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
I appreciate,
No, so we had a subcontractor, an architect that was working on a project actually here in the Panhandle on historic housing that we were doing. Florida Municipal League is Insurance Trust is a client through Synergy E&D. You guys are probably very familiar with them. And we've done a lot of work for them over the last 24 months. We hired an architect in Tallahassee who was working on the 2 historic properties that we were working on. We got asked by the owner, by Synergy E&D, to punt them off the project. They sued us for a breach of contract. We are in the process. Actually, what's happened is we got into going back and forth, getting information. Words slipped my mind. But we were able to prove that what they said was not true, that they actually did work on the project after they got told to not work on the project, and I haven't heard hide nor hair from them in 4.5 months. So I'm assuming it's done and that they're not going to pursue it any longer.
thank you very much. Gentlemen, I appreciate you providing this information. As I said earlier, very informative presentation, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Overdeer, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. And I'll just kind of piggyback a little bit on what Dr. Ramswell asked. We've had, as you can obviously, I'm sure you're aware of, we've had construction projects along 98 now for a better part of 3 years, and looks like we've still got maybe even as much as another year ahead of us. So the community and as well as the 30 or 40,000 visitors that we get every week are getting a little bit construction weary. So as we do this undergrounding, how much traffic, how much is that going to impede the flow of traffic along 98? Or is most of this construction mostly on the sides of the roads and doesn't really affect the traffic?
So the benefit of the utility is we do have, at least my experience in working with the utilities, we can work where we can reach safely. So as much as it will be impeding the traffic, there's ways we've worked out with our communities where, again, timing, other projects going on, we'll work in areas that are least impacted and be able to actually minimize being in the roadway specifically. Again, the utilities have that ability to be able to reach, and that's where we step in and know where those areas will be impacted heavily, especially in their operation side. So.
Okay, great. And then as you envision this probably is about somewhere in the neighborhood of an 8-year project?
Yes, I would believe 8 years. Just looking at the vast scope, once we get into it, we will be able to help you understand a full breakdown of the phasing and the schedule. that is where we come from and how we'll help you get there. So.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate all your help and great presentation again. Thank you so much.
I've got a couple more folks queued up. I do want to give Mr. Braden an opportunity, seeing how we can't see him, but he is participating online. He is not? Okay. Dr. Ramswell, you're up.
Sure, I just wanted to check and see if Chef or any of staff had any questions.
Thanks very much, Council Member and Mayor. Good evening. My name is Chef Wright, and I'm an underground lawyer. I worked on the PSC staff for several years, but I've been a lawyer for about 30 years, and I've actually worked on my first undergrounding case involving Golden Beach and FPL literally 30 years ago. Now, I do have a couple of questions for you. First, what would be, I noticed you're going to be the project manager, but Dan Hart's going to be the principal in charge. What's the difference there?
So, again, I think Tommy touched on this, but he's going to keep me in line on budget and timing on our end and make sure everything gets paid right on our end, and there's finances to cover. So he's going to make sure I stay in line, because I'm an engineer, and I get real technical real quick if I'm not careful, and that's the difference.
Well, good for you. But to get to a real point, though,
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson is the city manager, and I'm his lawyer. Mr. Zunguzzi over here is the public works guy. When we need something, who are we going to call? You or Dan?
You'll come to me, and
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good deal.
I will have that authority.
When you come to Corey with a need, and he doesn't have the resources or the time to do it, he'll call me and I'll get him the resources and time to deliver.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
But I've worked with several municipalities on these projects over a good while, my career. Most of the municipalities I have worked with have hired the work done, not all, but have hired the work done as we are permitted to do pursuant to utility tariffs and pursuant to the PSC's rules by other contractors. A couple of my clients, Jupiter Inland Colony and Jupiter Island specifically, saved a bunch of money by doing it that way. In your work with the municipalities you've named, how much of that work has been done by contractors engaged by your municipal client versus being done by Duke, TICO, FPL?
I'd like to say, let Steve answer part of it, but a majority.
I've been with us about a year, so let me answer this question.
Okay.
So on the 5 cities, not St. Pete Beach, but the others. So what we did is we did it I call it a semi-design build. So we ran an RFP, we won that RFP. So we did all the conduit, pads, boxes, and all that. So we designed it and constructed it at a significant savings. Be with Duke Energy, they don't like undergrounding, and so they basically, it's very, and I'm going to be careful in public record. Let's just say all of our options were not available to us at the time we started on those projects, okay?
Oh, got it.
And so we weren't aware of the PSC rule that was enacted in 2004 and 2005 that allows a municipality to turnkey undergrounding and to do it without being in private easements. There's not a requirement for private easements. In the 5 projects, we were able to negotiate that prior to this knowledge. So most of it's in the public right of way, not in private easements.
Right.
I would say we did 50% of the construction at a significant savings, and then actually landing the equipment, doing the hot work, and doing the removal of the overhead utilities, that was done by utility contractors. St. Pete Beach, we're trying to work the other direction where it is actually a turnkey. So that's part of what we're in negotiations with Duke Energy over now. And that's been, I guess we've been at it about 4.5, 5 months, and working through the PSC rules.
Okay. Do you have a feeling as to whether the actual installation, leaving aside who does it, but do you have a feeling as to the actual installation and design would be predominantly trenching or predominantly directional boring?
That's really going to depend on how congested that the current utilities under are. So we probably, in the 6 cities, 4 we were able to drill a majority of it. 2 we pretty much had to open trench because of the level of utilities. And in that, and along State Road 699, it is particularly brutal, the number of conduits and things that are underneath both sidewalks, where basically the public right-of-way was. And we didn't want to get under drive lanes in the roadway, because if you get under drive lanes, then it becomes your issue if there's repairs or if it needs to be moved. So we want to stay as much as we can in the public right-of-way, so it's never at your cost to move.
One final question. What is the longest project you've worked on in what I would call pole line miles or circuit miles?
For a one city or?
For one project, the
So,
longest.
I would say probably Paso Grillo Way is right at 2 miles. That whole 699 stretch it's all one stretch.
Got it.
It's 10 miles total, 10 to 12 miles total run on 699 that we've done.
Thanks very much.
And the other thing too,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So that's on that run, but we've done a lot of smaller undergrounding. We actually started doing undergrounding for we did the downtown of the city of Brooksville back in 2005. So with all our continuing contracts, we do a lot of small stuff. Groveland Park, I threw that in there. That's a park we retrofitted. We did the design in 45 days, and then they actually asked us to construct it. So we bid on the construction, we actually built it. But that was an undergrounding project. So we have many, many, many projects like that we've done through various communities. They're not what I would call major undergrounding projects like you guys are talking about, or the ones we're working on in the other communities currently.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Purple.
Thank you. Mr. Marlar?
Okay, I've got a couple of questions, but it's from the engineering point of view. I have been in the electrical field. I've worked as an electrician for many years, and I have a lot of electrical experience in SPAR, especially for digging holes. The complex I worked for, when they were building it, each of the utilities decided that they couldn't use the same ditch and everything, so they dug up areas 4 or 5 times, and every time they would hit something and they'd cause a disruption. In your engineering, are you working with the various utilities? I guess the question is are we going to try to get this coordinated where everything goes in one shot and not have to one utility digs over here and the next utility digs on top of that? Because I know there's maximum and minimum depths you have to use. And that also, because we had some years ago, we had the airport road project, and we had issues with burial of various things and channels that Gulf Power had to put in at that time. Mm-hmm. So will you coordinate with the utilities to try to let's say we have one ditch, mm-hmm. That's maybe, 5 feet, 6 feet deep, and everything gets buried according to the level of what they have. Will you be coordinating so that to me, that's a disruption if they have to keep digging back and forth and dig the same ditch and then accidentally hit power, water, or something like that, and then, because we have, if we lose power or water in a particular area for a long period of time, that's going to mess up our economy at the same time. I know that's a weird question, but.
No, not at all. We are strongly advocate for you. We step in and almost force the issue. The negotiations aren't typically 4 months because we don't have answers. It's because we're going to bat for you. We're standing there overlaying all the possible scenarios. For example, right now we're coordinating with a force main project, a bus transit project, all the impacts in our area, so we can stay in touch with those folks and get them in a visual and an understanding. So we're not doing work that we need to rework. Hence to the point on being able to do your own work through the PSC opportunities. That's why we're negotiating that opportunity, because that gives us control of the construction, being able to utilize putting the conduit all together in at the same time and not impacting everybody multiple times over where you're doing the work 6, 7 times. We'll be your best advocate at the end of the day. That's what we're doing right now, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Okay, because I guess, like I was saying, the main problem is during our tourist season,
Mm-hmm.
We have enough problems with the traffic as it is. We don't need to, various utility companies stopping traffic to bury their line versus somebody else burying their line.
Yeah, of course.
All right, that's the only thing I had, Mayor.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments or questions for our presenters? At this point, do we want to we'll go ahead and let all 3 presenters present before we go to public testimony, and then we'll have our discussion. All right? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Job well done. Thank you all for attending and answering all our questions. All right, so we'll give a few moments. Get somebody come up here and wipe the microphone down. one of our staff members. I see Michael making his way. Thank you very much. We'll give a moment here for the other team to come in. Or we're online, right? Our next two teams are online? Okay. Okay. So who's going to be up next, just for edification purposes? HBK. And they'll be virtual, correct? All right. There's Mr. Braden. Nope, he's not, nope. That's our HBK. That's what I was asking.
They look like him, Mama.
Yeah.
A little older.
Don, you
Well,
are
I'm
running
wearing
the
the
show
blue
right
shirt.
now.
We always end up with the blue shirt.
Yeah,
don't we?
him always does a lot of that.
I don't know why. All right. Just, I tell you what, just give me the A-OK and we'll start the second presentation.
Mark, if the audio gives you any trouble, you may want to try joining through your computer audio. We've had a few issues in
Hey,
the past
Kyle,
with phone,
Real quick before you start,
just so you're aware.
with Rodney not here, am I gonna, I thought I,
James, can you guys all hear me? This is Don Claywood with HBK.
Yes, sir, loud and clear.
Perfect. Let me know when I can commence.
Yes, sir, we'll wait on the mayor's direction for that. And Mark, it did look like your audio came on for a moment, so I don't know if you wanted to test it or not, but looks like you're good.
Yes, I am on. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir, good deal.
Perfect.
Thanks, James. Hey, James, is the rest of the audience muted right now? Like, I can't hear the council members, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes, Don, they're currently just deliberating, just speaking. I think the mayor's going to address when it's time to present. He'll turn his microphone on. You'll be able to hear him loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
All right, could everybody take their seats real quick? Show me one of those.
Hey, James, can they see us right now or no?
Yes, sir, you are live.
That's
All
great.
right, can everybody take a seat, and we'll carry on here with our second presenter, which is ABK Engineering, HBK Engineering. Take it away, sir.
Thank you. I'll pull our presentation up here really quickly, but I'm HBK Engineering's Director of Engineering, Don Claywig, and included with me is our division head for our Lake Mary office in Florida, Mark Katz. I believe that you both can see us right now, so we both apologize for that in advance. But without much ado, we'll pull up our presentation, and like to thank our previous presenter for providing us with some really good insight. And without further ado, I'll take off right now. Really quick, and all of you can get this in a PDF format as well for your sort of leave behind and reference as you go. We have a quick table of contents, what we'd like to cover. You know, our introduction, our safety, our history, the markets that we work in, some of the clients that we work with that you're familiar with, our current active project locations, as well as where HBK can work, some of our experience. We end with our diversity commitment, and then in our appendices, I gave you some team thumbnail resumes, as well as our experience across the board in the utility industry for your reference beyond this presentation, if you have any questions, etc. Really quick, want to touch base on HBK's probably the most important thing in our organization to our workers and our executive team is our safety commitment. From an organization top down, that is what we strongly believe in. So much so that we provide over 20 hours of safety training for all of our field personnel on a yearly basis. And our training goes all the way down to our office staff, where we train them in things like picking up boxes and things of that nature properly. We match and train this on our LMS so that all of our individuals at any given time, our clients such as yourselves, could ask us for our safety training for our field people. We can provide that to you at any time. A little bit of history on HBK. We are over 20 years old. We have over 16 offices across the United States. The closest one to you is in Lake Mary, Florida. That office has been in play for going on 3 years, and we've been working in and around the Florida market predominantly since about 2016, but our first projects actually were back in the late to roughly 2008, 9, and 10 timeframe when we were working in and around the Miami market doing telecommunications designs, both underground and overhead. We are a fully licensed, fully staffed engineering firm with both electrical, mechanical, civil, geotechnical, structural engineers on staff, as well as Florida licensed PLSs, PMPs, and a lot of project landscape architects is one thing we don't have in Florida. However, we're in flight of getting that licensure as well. We have a lot of individuals on staff, both from the project construction management standpoint, as well as CAD and GIS designers. The advantage of something recent within the last couple of months that HBK has been able to become a part of is as of July 2nd of this year, HBK became a wholly owned subsidiary of Quanta Services Company. And what does that mean to us in a format such as what we're presenting for you, for the city of Destin, for the council and all the attendees, is this relationship, being part of this family for HBK, allows us to bring to the table what maybe other entities might not be able to bring to the table. And the biggest component is a construction arm that is not only across the United States, but offers local Florida-based companies that can provide us a really strong insight into the overhead and underground installations for both the electric and the telecommunications industry. We have Irby Construction that has a strong Florida presence, as well as Mears Construction that I thought would be something that we might want to just throw in the mix there just for your reference. If I move forward though, I've covered a little bit about our history. I'm trying to go through this quickly, but we've always been a utility solutions provider organization. We are very focused in utilities. We don't do buildings. We don't do vertical. We are all linear work. So we're always working in and around the power, gas, telecommunications, in water management. And our infrastructure group is the sort of the compilation of all of those in a project such as this, where you're doing either road widening, DOT projects, street beautifications, or in our case here, undergrounding of overhead utilities. One strong advantage that HBK also brings to the table is that we also do our own in-house surveying and locating and have held contracts across the United States to perform that work. Really quick slide here for all of our clients in general, and I've highlighted or bolded some of them that are relevant to this market. We have Duke Energy. We're working a lot with Duke, both in the St. Pete as well as in the Lake Mary area. We are also working with TECO on their gas and electric system. Obviously, Florida City Gas and Florida Public Utilities, HBK is doing a lot of their gas infrastructure design. What does this make us familiar with? The underground and overhead utility net, landscape. Additionally, we've been working with CenturyLink, Comcast, and WOW, which are a lot of the telecommunications providers in and around the Florida market. If I move ahead to give you sort of an overview of where HBK works and where we're currently working, we're a nationwide company. We are very versatile and very nimble, which has allowed us to get into a bunch of different markets where we might not always have an office. I mean, we do not currently have an office in North Dakota. We currently don't have an office in Nevada. However, we're doing a lot of work for all of our different utility clients in multiple different states. Some of this is because of the relationships that we have with companies like Exelon or Duke that have multi-state footprints that allows us to not only provide work for Duke in, say, Florida, but maybe Duke in a different market, or Exelon in Chicago and Pennsylvania, as well as Washington, D.C. So we are able to get into markets and find opportunity and take what we've learned from different utilities and apply it in different markets. So there's a lot of lessons learned that our teams gained in all of these different markets in approach to overhead and underground installations. So we took a little bit of a nuts and bolts approach to our presentation into more about how we would do it and what we think that you should address when you're looking at a program of this nature. Obviously, Florida is a very good candidate for these types of projects, as was demonstrated by our peers in the industry in the previous presentation. Some of the big concerns we've highlighted here, and I'll go through them at briefly, and we can definitely touch back on them in any sort of Q&A. But one of the biggest things is where these projects happen in a vacuum, and the designing is done in a vacuum. Our opinion is that this work being performed autonomously creates conflicts like literally out of the gate that nobody even thinks about. And then obviously it's found at the last minute when it goes into construction. Some of the big things that you're also going to be concerned with are delays for whether it's material acquisition, multiple different contractors, and we'll address that further on in the presentation, but unforeseen obstacles, which weather and Florida, weather could be a big problem. Poor planning and coordination. The fortunate thing for Florida is I don't think you guys have much of a snow problem like I do here in Chicago, but rain, definitely. Other things that you come across are unanticipated expenses. And some of these might seem obvious, but if it's not planned for and you don't build that into your schedule and your construction plans, it could be a really big problem with contractor delays and as a result of basically poor planning and coordination. Some of your other concerns, and I believe some of the questions kind of lent towards what would be our impact, is definitely the impacts to the right of way. And that is the two biggest ones are restoration, and whether it's a beautification with sidewalks and landscaping, and traffic management. I think the biggest concern of everybody is, the following couple questions is the public sentiment and their approval. How will this impact their residents, their day-to-day commute? And is there going to be a cost to me? Am I going to have to pay for this? So, and then what are the advantages? I mean, obviously everything underground makes everything a lot more, visually aesthetic, but what's the big advantage? The big advantage is power outages, significantly less, restoration of power in very, very short periods of time. A lot protection against, violent storms such as hurricanes or just, tropical thunderstorms. And then the other, you got coordination, and that's a big concern. Who's responsible for the interface? Is it the municipality? Is it the utility? Is it the subdivision? Is it the residents themselves? And then will the utilities get on board? And can contractors work together on one project, multiple different entities trying to work all in the same space? How does that come together? What are some of the keys to success? The early engagement of all the vested parties. That's the biggest thing. And I think anybody in the room would tell you that early engagement. And I believe my peers said that as well. Whether it's the municipal entities, the utilities, and the public. We want to make sure that everybody's on board and understands what we're trying to accomplish with this undergrounding program. We want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of the project structure. Who's the lead agency? Like, who is responsible for basically holding the contract or herding all the cats? Is it the local DOT? Is it the municipality? You know, is it the local town? I mean, with those sort of things are, you know, going to have to be determined on the front end. Who are all the utility participants who actually wants to get engaged? Who's going to be responsible for the public interaction? What are the regulatory requirements? And what's the overall relocation process going to encompass? And we talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation. One of the big things, obviously, all of these keys to success are things that HBK has really excelled in all of our relocation, public improvement, road widening, DOT type projects, is that we have this strong understanding of utility requirements, what their operational constraints are, what their clearances are, what their regulatory requirements, what they're held to, and what the installation requirements are going to be with respect to, you know, who can do it, how it must be done, how the utilities can interact with each other, and how they can coexist in an underground environment without killing the right-of-way space available. Some of the other big deals in being successful in this scenario are the continued communication. You have your open and direct dialogue. You have to be communicating not only with the utilities, but with the public and with the vested agency parties to make sure that the mayor's engaged at all times, to whether, you know, the project's moving successfully or we had hiccups. We want to make sure that not only the municipal engineer is very well aware of what's going on, but the utilities engineers knows what's going on. City council knows what's going on. We want to make sure that all of these individuals know ahead of time before it makes it to the public, even if it's a good thing. And then when you're also providing progress notification to the public to make sure that they understand, like, okay, we're hitting the schedule, all the targets are moving along, and they said they'd be done, you know, October 11th, and it looks like they're buttoning up the road right now, and it looks like maybe they'll be done on the 7th or the 8th, but the public can see that, and you provide them an interactive platform to go and log in or check it out on the city's website and say, oh, wow, you know, this is planned to only take 6 months. Let's track and see how this really goes. And then the biggest key to success, hands down, is the coordination of all the municipal entities, whether it's streets and sanitation, whether it's the engineering department, whether it's the water department, and then you've got your utilities, all of those that are in the area, and knowing them and being able to work with them and understanding their concerns with an installation such as what's being proposed. And then working with all the installation contractors and the potential different design entities. You know, how many different contractors are going to be engaged? Is it one for every installation for every utility? And is the design going to be done by 7 or 8 different design entities? How is that going to all be coordinated? And if you can get that nailed, that's more than half the battle right there. HBK's general philosophy that we recommend to any of the municipalities at this point is that whatever the program looks like, the main point that it should do is it should create an environment for the municipality and the utilities to work collaboratively together. And that's a pretty simple statement, but executing it is a whole different animal. It is recognizing that everybody has a boss to answer to, that everybody has goals to meet, that everybody has budgets that they have to work within on both sides of the table. The sooner that you can get everybody coming together and talking from a positive standpoint and all pulling the same rope, the better. We also, our big focus is to work with the municipality on the front end, is to coordinate it with all the other work that the city might have going on. And whether it is a big condominium complex or, you know, street beautification programs or road widening, any sort of public improvement projects, you know, if it's sewer and water main replacement programs, et cetera, you're going to want to make sure that you're incorporating all of that information into the front end of your program and all of your planning so that you don't tear up the street twice. You don't dig this hole twice and fill it in twice. You are trying to coordinate these efforts such that it's one street restoration, it's one traffic control plan, it is one impact to the public as much as possible. Our opinion is that a team familiar with municipal and utility design should be employed for the oversight and implementation of the plan, as well as provision of the actual designs and design coordination. How does that fit HBK? Well, HBK's done electric utility design, gas utility design, telecommunications utility design, as well as water design. So we are familiar with multiple different utilities' approaches to designing their systems and have learned quite a few lessons on what we think are the best approaches. And obviously each utility that you work with is going to have a slightly different approach. What we have found, though, it's about 75% of the engineering and 25% of the understanding of their specifications and maybe their tribal knowledge, and pulling them into the fold and gaining that and working with them to gain their trust that you can provide their design system, their systems design in a very effective fashion that meets all of their requirements and allows you to coordinate that design across multiple entities. And whether those designs are performed by different entities and you're coordinating them, or you're the designer of record for all of them, having this strong developed bond relationship between all the entities is the key to success on that front from the design standpoint. This falls into the line of, we're establishing and maintaining a strong understanding of the utility environment. Again, this is building the relationships locally, as well as having a really strong understanding of other utilities programs. And you might want to, well, why does, Gulf Power care about what, Baltimore Gas and Electric is doing? Well, they might not care directly, but they do want to know what their peers in the industry are doing and ask that question often. Like, what are you guys seeing in other environments? What is Con Ed doing, or what is ComEd doing in New York and Chicago respectively? How are they handling these scenarios? And we're able to bring some of our lessons learned to the table and bring in our peers from the utility world to have those conversations and say, hey, this is what we've seen and this is how we worked it. And those conversations are really constructive because you get a different point of view than, say, maybe the playbook that your given utility or your given municipality has been running by for years. And it might be a great playbook, but there's always one more play that you can add that gets you one more point. And I think that, bringing those players to the table is really, really important. We also want to minimize the impact of the public. I mentioned that earlier, but it's something that's been emphasized by us all the time, emphasized by our peers in the industry. But you guys have a bigger concern beyond just normal, is that you have a very big tourist attraction. Your beaches are awesome, and you don't want that to impact revenue for all of the beach community in general. So working out a plan that coordinates all of these activities to minimize that impact, I think is one big important part of HBK's philosophy. It saves space, it saves time, it hopefully saves money, and it has everybody walking away from the experience saying, I'm so glad we did this. That kind of lends right into the efficient management and the use of the right-of-way. And that's basically getting all the utilities together, minimizing the impact of the space, not digging multiple times, not having a contractor do restoration, not replacing the sidewalk 3 times, and so on. So it's getting all of that work done at one time, one impact, one construction site. And again, this is perfect world scenario, but this is what you're striving for, because you don't want the public to be disappointed with the process. You want them to be engaged and understand that this is what it takes, but we're only doing this one time. We're not going to screw up your driveway. You're going to be able to park in your driveway in a week, and that's it. You continue to create the ease of coordination between municipal agencies, and that's facilitating meetings between the utility design engineers, between the city engineers, between potential installation contractors, as well as the landowners that might be impacted along the way. And the reason why I say potential installation contractors is if you are able to bring those contracting partners to the table to provide some professional industry founded experience to the conversation, that carries a lot of water with the public when there is a contracting entity standing there being able to tell them, hey, we think this can be done and this is how we do it and this is the schedule and this is the impact, and getting it firsthand from the boots on the ground individual that's going to be turning the shovel and operating a directional drill rig. We do know that every instance is unique. And in your case, it might be the beach town or a given street or a park or a historic region. But all of those weigh into the fact that each project is unique. The project in St. Pete's Beach might be a little more unique because there's a historic district that might be impacted. Yours might be because of the highway or the DOT roadways. But either way, all of the proper foresight and planning need to be engaged and implemented into your program. Something that we'll talk a little bit down the line here is the consideration of joint infrastructure installation approaches. And that we have found to be very successful on multiple different fronts for municipalities and DOTs. We believe it's probably the most effective way to go in scenarios like this, because it usually, and I say usually, I would say 99 times out of 100, eliminates most of the contracting concerns, most of the multiple dig concerns, and minimizes the traffic control and at the end of the day, impacting the impacts to the residents and business owners, et cetera, is significantly reduced. And then the biggest thing is we over communicate with open discussions, and these discussions are geared towards obtaining, results driven solutions. And we want our approach that we take to have the buy-in of everybody engaged. And that is from the council all the way on down to the individual that's, digging the holes. We think it's really important for people to be able to know why we're doing it, know where we're going to do it, know how long it's going to take. And we want the guy that is literally the general foreman in the field to be able to, if given permission, obviously, to provide an answer to, hey, how long are you going to be here? Or, hey, why are we doing this? To any individual that might walk up to the construction site and address the project in general. A little further on our design and approach, and then this is a little bit of some overlap, but we want to, on the front end, you're going to create a list of all the best companies. And it might not just be the utilities, and it might not just be the municipalities, but it might be the larger business owners that have a lot of truck traffic or delivery traffic, et cetera, and determine who all these decision makers are, and work with all the local external affairs individuals and the community leaders to make sure that everybody's pulled in that can provide their voice and their input to the project on the front end and gain an understanding. So when their neighbors or their constituents are asking them questions, they can speak intelligently to, this is why we're doing it, and this is the input, and we had to give up a little bit of this to get the greater good. Obviously, we want to have some initial meetings that everybody gets to come to and gets engaged in the conversation and the concept so that they can go back to their leadership. I mean, utilities have bosses to answer to as well. They're going to have to go and talk to individuals and get permission and get releases to do their work. We're going to work to obtain the buy-in and the potential impact. And that's where they're going to be figuring out, the budgetary constraints and as well as the contracting constraints. The lead entity in our situation has primarily been the utility coordination group is responsible for gathering all the information on existing conditions. And what I mean by that is going out and collecting all the atlases, doing all the survey, doing all the overhead and pole evaluations, and going and basically creating maps that work. And then it's working with the municipality and the right legal entities to determine where the funding's going to come from and who's going to pay for what and how that's going to get broken down. And a couple more things, and the biggest one is, the overall schedule. How does the biggest driver? At the end of the day, obviously cost is important, safety is very important, but schedule is going to be your driver, and that's to be the one is the public's going to ask probably the most questions about is, when is this going to be done? And that is very important to get out of the gate and communicate durations so that everybody can kind of settle into the fact that, okay, we have an end date in sight, We don't like that it's a year away or 5 or 8 years away, but we understand that this segment is going to take this long of time. And then you're going to really come down to determining your construction approach. Are you going to have separate installations with separate installation contractors? Can we, navigate all of the parties and get a joint utility installation? Or is there going to be, some sort of hybrid approach where the main civil infrastructure is put in by one contractor, but then maybe the utilities come back and install all of their own occupants of the conduit system, occupants of the manhole. And what I mean by that is the electric cabling, the splicing, the fiber optic, whether it's going to be where all the loops go, all of the basic occupants of the utilities infrastructure. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to kind of determine who owns that piece of property. And then one other big approach is determining the contracting approach. Who pays for what and how much should they pay? And not just should the municipality pay or what this utility pays this and the telecom pays that and the power grid pays that. It's breaking it down to say, okay, if we did this ourselves, how much would this cost? But if we do this as a group, it's going to be significantly less. And I have X number of conduit, you have Y. Well, you pay, Y's percentage of the installation cost. So there's a good conversation that can happen around that, but it needs to be determined on the front end so we're not arguing about it on the back end. And I covered this a little early, but we want to definitely know who owns and controls the existing infrastructure. The proposed infrastructure, like who's going to own that final plant? Is it going to be some sort of joint use agreement that you have an overhead infrastructure? Do you have a joint use agreement for the conduit of the underground infrastructure? And another thing that we want to get ahead of is working with the city on getting their 5-year and 10-year plans of infrastructure improvements. This project, we're gauging right now between 5 and 8 years. Well, all the work that you're going to be doing in the next 10 years is going to impact potentially this project's footprint. And we want to be ahead of that with you so that you're not getting in the situation where you've been there, done that once, and you're going to have to go back there and go, been there, done that again. The other things you're looking towards is determine your overall design approach. Are you going to have, one overall master installation design set versus multiple different installation drawing sets? Are you going to have a review cycle of, what's traditional of a 30, 60, 90, or are you going to take some other approach? The last kind of few components we'll cover, and I'll hopefully wrap up soon here because, hopefully you guys aren't falling asleep on me. I'm a fast talker, and I do it to keep you awake. The utility coordination entity on the front end, the most important part about this, once you decide that an overall design approach is to compile all this existing infrastructure into one set, one drawing set that even if we have to give it out to all the different entities to design their basis on, and then you're going to determine and implement oversee your SUE program. And we've talked about surveying the overhead stuff, and you can see over on the right-hand side there of this presentation is some of the overhead survey components you're going to be collecting so you know what's there. And, at the end of the day, if you have to leave some poles up, at least ahead of the time, you know what you can and can't leave. And your underground, your subsurface utility engineering program and determining, where you need to go full on with an ASC level A and a test hole program, or whether you need just level B with locating, or if a level C scenario works best for the design approach that you're going after. As you work through that, you're going to see the areas where actually all of the levels A, B, C are going to be implemented as part of your process. Oh, apologies. Some of the roles and responsibilities that I see as our utility coordinator, and we've covered this a little bit, but we want to make sure that utility coordinating entity in our mind is this management team that you're looking for is going to be developing and working through all of the data collection programs and who implements them, who's performing them. And if it's self-performed, HBK can definitely do that. All of this stuff that we're talking about, HBK can self-perform. It's putting together all of your survey grade utility infrastructure maps. So at the end of the day that we know that what we're depicting, we're pretty confident that when we go to put something in the ground or relocate something or underground something, that the locations that we're assigning and we're picking for those alignments work because the map that we're working from depicts all the information that we've found. And again, depending on design components, we're gonna have to coordinate with the other utilities. And it's either we're doing the designs for these utilities, which would be the most probably cost-effective for everybody, as well as the most expeditious. But we are gonna be coordinating across all those utilities to make sure that if nobody agrees to a joint trench scenario, that at least the designs that we're proposing fit in the prescribed easement or fit on the north side of the street, and everybody can coexist in the same space. Obviously, you're going to be working on developing a communication plan. I've stressed that a lot. Communication is really important in these scenarios, not just internal to the team, but external to all of the vested parties that are in the public. Some of the other things that we would do in this scenario is our schedule and our progress updates would be via varying media, whether it's email communication, a GIS platform depiction that is web-based that you can log into from your smartphone to see, hey, how is the project going? That gives you the 30,000-foot view or the 4,000-foot view. And then your traditional Gantt charts and things of that nature. But we feel like the GIS platform for depicting progress on a project is probably the most effective because people can relate to spatial pictures and aerial photography and say, oh, okay, they're done from block X to block Y, and they're moving and they should be done with Y to Z at the end of October, and really just kind of see the impact to their daily commute. Typically what we've seen is, each utility, each municipality sort of determines their relocation requirements. I mean, they all have their standard specifications. They all are a little more flexible in public relocation and undergrounding programs than they might be in just their standard installation. Again, I mentioned earlier, we want everybody working off the same base file, the same base drawing, so that we are all basically playing with the same deck of cards. We got to make sure that the design entities that are representing the utilities, whether it's internal, external, or if it's a utility coordinating entity, has creating designs that then are input into the overall plan to make sure that we have any conflicts. And when we do, we're going to work through sort of a conflict matrix to, discuss what can be moved, what can be changed. Can we move a drainage structure to allow for a whole bunch of utilities to sneak past it on the north side of the street? And then at the end of the day, we're going to be going through proposed adjustments and improvements to the proposed installations that everybody can live with, because we recognize that we're all trying to accomplish the same goal, which is getting everything underground. At the end of all this, we might determine, we need new easements, amended easements, additional, access to a person's property, either just for the temporary construction condition or a permanent easement that might need to be required just because there's no space available. And I talked about this earlier, was the importance of engaging the contracting, the community for input. It's important. I mean, these guys are going to be building it. These gals are going to be building it. They're going to be digging in the streets, and they should have some input at a very high level into what they think makes sense. And we found that it allows for us to get, effective implementation and an understanding of means and methods that in given areas are going to work the best. We get a lot of different recommended alternatives. Like, I would set up here and do and drill there. Or I wouldn't do an HDD. I would do a box tunnel, or I would do a jack and bore. Or we would, work with them to understand all of those components. And I'll reiterate that our new relationship with the Quanta Services Group provides us direct access to industry experts in all of these fields that we're talking about implementing, and it's part of an undergrounding program. And that's not just the civil infrastructure, but that's the electrical infrastructure, that's the fiber optic infrastructure, as from the design, the construction, and then the implementation standpoints. We have individuals on our team now and access to them in market that can help answer those questions. You're going to be looking at things like your construction bid cycle. How are you going to handle? Are you going to do? It's going to be dependent, obviously, on your construction approach. Are we going to have multiple installation contractors? Are we going to have one? Are we going to have one set of bid drawings and bid documents, or are there going to be multiple? How are we going to communicate to all the different bidders? How are we going to address pricing? Is it going to be cost plus arrangements or T&E not to exceeds? Are we going to do lump sum or some semblance of a unit pricing structure? I mean, each has its pluses and minuses, but a matrix you're going to work through to determine the approach that you want to take, and a lot of municipalities have their own sort of mode that they like to deal with, and it works most effective for them and their budgeting standpoint. And then on the back end, you're going to be, you're communicating with all of your utilities and the installation contractors during the coordination efforts for the entire project. So this is ongoing. You're going to be always on top of the schedule, always on top of what permits are needed, whether it's lane closures, whether it's, any sort of crossings or dealing with any wetlands and things of that nature. And then traffic control arrangements, that's going to be dynamic. You're going to be going on and shifting those on a very, very regular basis. And HBK has on staff FDOT certified traffic control designers. So we're set when it comes to being able to provide those services to part of this program. The utility coordinator is ultimately responsible for if there's utility resident engineers that are going to be on site, there's the municipal engineers. And then if we happen to have our own coordination engineers on site in lieu of any of those individuals, we're going to be working and coordinating all of these activities, all of their responsibilities, and making sure that it's one message communicated to them and their vested parties, their bosses, their managers. And we're going to do that in multiple facets. But one of the bigger ones that we're going to oversee would be an implementation of a request for information and a field change request program. And we do that so you can track what's going on and make sure that the change that's made in the field can be done in a really expeditious manner, and it doesn't have an impact or the anticipated, it would be anticipated that it's channeled very quickly through all of the pertinent engineers that can weigh in on it and provide really quick responses so that we don't impede the construction activity. And then probably the last two, as far as this program goes, that are really important is that's not part of the plan. Sorry about that. Is development of a record survey program. And the reason why this is important is at the end of the day, you want to know where all this infrastructure is. So the level of accuracy is important not only for the maintenance crews that have to come through and work on this system, but also for the protection of this infrastructure. And that's so coming down the road, when you propose work 5, 10, 15 years from now in a given area, you know exactly where this infrastructure is so that you can design and work around it without impacting it and damaging it, et cetera. So out of that survey program is just going to be your record drawings that are as important to maintain. So earlier on, I talked about some of the advantages of different construction methods, and I'm really leaning towards one, realistically, because really there's not really any other one besides this, except a whole bunch of separate trenches, littering and damaging the street. But the advantages of this is having all these parties participate in one is really minimizes any sort of redesign and conflicts. Future utilities know what's going on there. You have a really good idea of one planned location. Obviously, there's less opportunity for damage. There's ease of future locating, and this all lends towards really good record keeping and really good survey of the installation as it goes in. If you can use the same contractor for the project from soup to nuts, or at least for a given segment, it minimizes costs on mobilization. It minimizes disturbance to citizens. It keeps traffic flow better, and it generally keeps the construction costs down because you have one general foreman, you have one crew doing, you have a lot less hands in the same working basket trying to get things done. It also provides for, you mentioned earlier, protection, but it's the reduction in damages to facilities from the other relocation contractors. And what I mean by that is if you only have one contractor digging this, there's not another relocation contractor that's going to come along running roughshod or in a hurry that digs up inadvertently what you just installed because it's not in the utilities locating program or in their GIS platform just yet because it was installed a week before. We've been on projects where that's happened, where an installation's gone in and a gas main's gone in, and then a week later, a telecommunications contractor comes in and does his directional boring and comes across something and scrapes the pipe, and here you are now digging up that pipe and putting on a new coating. The coordination on that project was not great. Number one, and number two, it would have been a lot better had all of the coordination been done by one entity and the engineering design been done by one entity. Continuing open communications about the responsibility with utilities that might be joining the joint utility duct bank. That's important because they all have an agreement that we established in place. Did I lose somebody? Oh, okay.
I apologize.
One other advantage is basically the ease of coordination between all the engineers, and that's every engineer that's vested in this, as well as all the public agencies in general and the right-of-way owners. We found that this approach provides for a very predictable project. It reduces cost, it reduces the cost, it reduces schedule, and it reduces impact to the public. And it provides just a really good way and a very direct way to communicate about the project because you don't have as many entities feeding into the communication. So early on, we talked a bit about, our teammates, et cetera, but HVK is really big on diversity. And the reason I throw this slide in here is this is some of HVK's diverse partners across our footprint that we work with on a daily basis. Our local providers, our local diverse firms, we have Hyde Survey that works with us on projects. We have our Berken Environmental Services that works with on projects in market. We have Orthotech as one of our other partners that works in market. So we are very vested in developing our diverse partners in any program. It's time for questions. At the end in our appendices, like I said, I provided some information about HBK's experience in the electric, the telecom, and the gas industries, as well as some brief resumes of our team leads.
All right. Well, does any council members have any specific questions they'd like to ask our presenters? You already answered yours. That's good. Go ahead, Dr. Ramswell's got a few questions for you.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a couple questions. I know you've got an office in Lake Mary, but I didn't see one local. Do you plan on establishing a local office for this project if you're selected?
Yeah, we would intend to have people in market. I don't think that it would be effective otherwise.
And I didn't see Gulf Power as one of the electric companies that you had worked with before. Is that correct?
That is correct, but Gulf Power is owned by FPL, by NextEra, and our Quanta relationships, we have a very, very strong relationship with NextEra, and I'm confident that we would be able to work side by side with Gulf Power through those relationships.
So with that said, I know you had said coordination was a pivotal piece of the puzzle, and I'm just wondering for different utilities that you have not worked with before, such as Okaloosa Gas or some of the other entities that we have around here, including Gulf Power, how would you work to establish that relationship?
Well, it would be that would be a multifaceted approach, but well, first of all, we would reach out to their local engineering entities and establish contact with them, determine who are all the vested parties that would be affected. We would also work with our contracting partners that are local with Mears and Irby and others to determine the individuals that we need to be reaching out to. And then one step further is then going and working with the other, like telecommunications, always their groups have external affairs individuals. And for an example, Comcast has their local peers that we are very familiar with that would definitely put us in touch with his equivalents in the other markets, whether it is, Gulf Power or individuals in those different utilities. So we've been really successful with being able to navigate primarily to get those relationships through our external affairs contacts with our current client base. And that's really how you're able to get into markets like we're doing work currently in Texas. And we recently have established an office in Texas, but primarily speaking, we didn't have an office in Austin, but we got in touch with some of the local utilities through our contacts through external affairs. So we found that an effective approach to get in contact.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Overdeer or Mr. Menschel, I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Mr. Menschel, you have a few questions for Donald.
Yes, sir, I do. Donald, thank you very much for your presentation, sir.
You're
got a
welcome.
I've got a series of questions for you. Let me just start off with the first one. Please tell us the availability of the lead and the other key personnel whom your company will assign to the city's underground project over the next 2 years.
The lead that we would assign to this project would be available to the city if the commitment is needed, 100% of his commitment. He's willing to relocate, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay.
So to follow on, Mark Katz, who is our local lead, will be probably available, I would say 25 to 50% of the time, and I would be available roughly 25% of the time.
So if this project took off and the city manager had to make contact with somebody, who would be his go-to person?
His go-to person out of the gate would be me, but once we establish the contractual relationship, it would be our lead, John Grieger.
Okay. Second question, please describe your understanding of what's involved in the city's underground project.
My understanding of what's involved in the city's underground project?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. A lot. It is an understanding of all the players in the game, all the impacted utilities, all the affected agencies, where we're going to put it and how it fits, how it fits in the space that's available to us. I mean, that's the biggest thing is undergrounding overhead distribution, overhead telecommunications, overhead transmission into the underground environment in a structure that not only works from a financial standpoint, but from a schedule and public impact standpoint.
Okay, moving on. What is your expectation of who, as between utilities and the contractors, the city team and the contractors engaged by the city is going to be performing what work in executing the project?
I'm processing that, so I apologize. So from our standpoint, from a utility coordinating, management, undergrounding standpoint, we could do all of that. We could actually bring to the table all of the partners to do actually all of the installation as well. Not just the construction management, not just the engineering, but if it was needed, we could bring in the contractors to do all of the undergrounding, all of the overhead removal, all of the work required to do this, we have in market in Florida to support this effort.
Okay. Although financial decisions haven't been made, you should reasonably assume the city of Destin's underground project will require some bond financing. What experience do you have in supporting any bond financing efforts?
We've always provided I will say the backup documentation, and whether it is in written form or in drawing form, we've always provided that documentation to the lawyers, the legal team, the external affairs folks, depending on who the interaction was with, for them to have that interaction. There are individuals that are experts at this. I'm not one of them. I'm experts at providing the drawings and the designs and the plans, the ideas to give to those individuals to find the funding and work through all the legal conversations that, I'm only in court if somebody made a mistake. And so far that has not happened.
Okay, well, segue into my next question. Has your company or any member of your team ever been involved in any litigation relating to underground projects, contracts relating to construction or installation of underground facilities, or to the management of such underground projects?
No.
Okay. Two more. Has your company or any member of your team ever been removed from a project or told to stop work on a project by a client?
No.
Okay. And finally, has your company ever been sued for breach of contract?
No.
Okay. I appreciate all your answers to my questions, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other council members have any questions? Skip, do you have anything?
No, I'm good. He's answered all my questions. Thank you.
All right.
Mayor, I'd like to again ask if Chef or any of staff have any questions.
Thank you for the friendly reminder, because I had forgotten. Shep?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, Dr. Ramswell. Good evening, Mr. Clayweg. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good deal. My name is Chef Wright. I'm a utility law specialist in Florida. I've been doing energy in Florida for about 40 years, and I've been an attorney for 28 years of that. And I've done a lot of stuff with electric undergrounding in my career. I just have a few questions for you. Following on a question you got from Councilmember Menschel, I think you said your lead, the lead person assigned to this would be John Grieger. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
And where is he located?
He's currently in Chicago. John's done a lot of our projects in the Midwest in Illinois and Wisconsin on street beautification, road widening, DOT type projects.
Okay. I was looking at the engineering org chart that you included in your response to the city's RFQ.
Yeah.
Who would be the project manager for this?
Actually, John would.
You got Ed Sawicki. You got Ed Sawicki shown on your org chart here, but I'm just trying to get it straight.
Understood. Yeah. So this is always fun when people, retire and move on. Mr. Sawicki retired from HBK. I'm going to guess probably 2 months ago at this point. Mark, is that correct? So Ed retired about 2 months ago, and Dan Hoskins, one of our other team members, took a job with another entity. So if you look at the end of the presentation that I provided, you'll see a new structure. And Mark's always been on the team. I've always been on the team. But in replacement and of those two individuals, we've put in 3 individuals from some of our programs in the Midwest that have run these types of programs, as well as really strong subsurface utility engineering programs. So their thumbnail resumes are included at the end of the presentation, and we can definitely provide the city with more exhaustive resumes as well. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you. That did answer that question. Who on the project team, as it now stands for the City of Destin project, has worked as the project manager or owner's representative for an electric utility overhead to underground conversion project?
4 of the 5. No, 3 of the 5. Both myself, Bethany Turk, and John Grieger has worked on overhead to underground conversion projects.
As project manager or owner's rep?
As utility coordinators. So on some of the tollway programs that we worked on, it was funny that some of these really big houses don't want to deal with the utility coordination component, which basically impacts their programs the most if it's not done well. So we took those contracts from, and one of the entities was CH2M for one of the big programs for a tollway project. Probably about an 8 or 9 mile program of all the utility coordination along that alignment. And that included everybody. Gas, electric, telecommunications, long haul, gas pipelines. I mean, you name it, it was there.
Where were those projects?
Those projects were in Illinois and in Wisconsin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that all set? You good?
That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no further questions or comments, Donald, I want to thank you so much for taking time to give your presentation to the council members and our staff here and the members of the public. And I guess we'll move on to our last presenter. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. You all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, just a reminder, Don and Mark, I'm going to have to dismiss you from the webinar. If you'd like to rejoin, you do have that option through the links that you received earlier.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Man, I thought he was bringing us a pizza. Did you? We had pizza actually at 6 o'clock, but I'm getting hungry. All right, let's, I want to make sure that, James, are we ready to go for this next round of presentation? Yes, sir. Just stand by 1 minute. All right, so we're loaded up, ready to go. I just want to say before we go any further, after this presentation and before we go into public public comment and discussion, we'll probably take a quick break, and then we'll get back to business. So without further ado, you have the floor. Go ahead and state your name. Go.
All right. Hi there, good evening. My name is Melanie Porter. I'm the CEO with Utility Consultants of Florida. And we really want to thank you this evening for inviting us to present our firm's expertise and abilities to help the city of Destin with their utility undergrounding conversion project. A little about our firm. We pride ourselves on our quality of service. We listen to identify your goals and objectives. We have a proven positive track record, and we are never driven by utilization goals. We have great relationships with our clients. They last long after a project's completion, and they are outstanding with our utility owners as well. We specialize in turnkey undergrounding projects from start to finish. We have highly sought after project management, and they have extensive experience with undergrounding projects. We are a local firm. We're located here in the state of Florida. We work primarily in beach communities, just like yours, and we live in them as well. We're a WBE and an SBE firm. I'd like to turn the remainder of the presentation over to Mark Porter, our principal in charge, Steve Maniaci, our project manager, and Brian Walker with McKim & Creed. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie, and we appreciate your time. We know you guys, your time is valuable, so we really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight. We wanted to let you know in our proposal package, we really put a lot of information and details in that. We really tried to elaborate on how these projects start and finish. For this project, before submitting that proposal, we drove through the corridor, we drove through the residential streets, we went down the neighborhoods, we went around the airport, the CRA districts. We spent a lot of time looking at the existing infrastructure. We might even spent a little bit of time on the water here, but we wanted to make sure that we were a good fit for the city, and we believe we are, and here's a couple of reasons why. So our Town of Longboat Key $49 million project is a rather large project. We think it's a lot of similarities to the city of Destin here. 10 miles FDOT corridor. Here in City of Destin, we calculated 8 miles. So when you're working with the DOT and you're working on those corridors, that's really critical. It's a whole different approach to the project. 54 miles of residential sections in Longboat Key. We calculated 68. You have almost 300-something thousand feet of linear roadway distances through your city, 246 streets. Same thing with Longboat Key as that heavy residential involvement. Another project that we're involved with is the Virgin Trains. I don't know if you're familiar with that project, but it's well over $250 million project from Orlando Airport down to Miami. We provide subject matter expert and utility coordination. As you can imagine, the undergrounding and the effort with the communication companies at a 240-mile corridor is very extensive. So we're proud to have that. And what we point out with that one is the airports. Same thing, we don't want to overlook the fact that you have an airport here in the city, and we had to deal with Orlando, Miami, a lot of the smaller airports in between, so we're familiar with that as well. Bel Air Beach, a little bit smaller project. You really can't compare the smaller projects with a large project like this, but that had a lot of heavy residential involvement. When you're working in communities around people's homes, it's a whole different approach. City of Bradenton Beach, CRA district. We work through the CRA district, so we're very involved with that. That's a whole nother approach, just like we had talked about with the FDOT corridor. When you're working in the CRA district, a lot of businesses, residents, and a lot of community and traffic from visitors, so we understand that. The next slide, we wanted to talk a little bit about the individual projects that we included in our proposal. So with the Bel Air Beach, this is just a special project to us, and the reason being is we came in after a larger firm and went in there and revised some estimates. As a result, we've gained some really strong relationships in that process. We're working with them to develop other undergrounding sections as well, so that's very important to us. We also, for that project, worked with Bryant Miller Olive. At the August 17th City Council meeting, we saw that you approved him to help with some beach property acquisitions, I believe, in some of this project. We've got a working relationship with them, and in addition to this project, they're also involved with Longboat Key. And because of our estimates and our working relationship with them, they brought us on to another project that's not undergrounding to help them estimate that. So we've got a really good working relationship. We understand that importance. Bradenton Beach, CRA district. The interesting thing about that project is different funding. CRA is funding some of the sections within the CRA. We have state appropriations requests to gather money to do undergrounding sections. As you can imagine, the funding requirements between those two projects are completely different. So we understand the funding and the involvement with that and the tracking and documentation. Again, with Longboat Key, funding, the methodology assessment, we were heavily involved in a lot of that process, including court testimony. So again, BMO was the city or the town of Longboat Key's attorney for that. We had to go to court, and a couple of things that they usually will ask in that process is, how did you base your estimates? Where did you develop the numbers? But do you have similar type project experience that those estimates are based upon? And we can firmly say yes to that. Major sequencing of construction, as you can imagine, doing a full town project like that, similar to your size, it's a lot of phasing and sequencing. We talk a little bit more in the slides as to how that's developed. And then reduced schedule. So when we started that project, it was a 5.5-year construction project, and the city commissioners came after the Hurricane Irma, and they said, hey, is there any way that you can condense that schedule, kind of compress it down a little bit? Came back to them and said, we think we can get 3.2. We're going to go at it really hard. They supported that. It's just as we're standing here in front of you tonight, we stood in front of them last week to report that we're ahead of that schedule. So we're really pleased with that. And the biggest thing we wanted to emphasize on these is zero contingencies have been utilized. There's a $2 million contingency in Longboat Key. We haven't touched it, and we're almost halfway through the undergrounding. We put a lot of hard work and effort in that to be able to say that. Bradenton Beach, the same thing. Bel Air Beach just didn't have any contingency. The next slide is the Virgin Trains project we talked about. This is a mega project. We helped with the original estimates. We helped with the major contracts with a lot of the Sprints, the AT&T, CenturyLink, a lot of the same players involved with this project. We helped negotiate those contracts. We also put out the procurement package with that project. After that, or since that time, our firm's been given a 5-year contract with Virgin Trains to continue subject matter expert, help them with any issues that they're having. This includes a lot of undergrounding and communications that we talked about earlier. And then again, it involves those close coordination with the airports. The common keys to success, we think, on these projects is, like Melanie alluded to at the start, is just understanding your goals and objectives. If we fail to do that at the beginning, we don't know how these projects can be successful. We're really focused on that. And then the approach and the planning. The experienced team, and then the coordination. We're really big with transparency and communication. These projects don't have to be complicated. We live and breathe them, so we know that they can be an easy process. I think it just has to be well communicated for that to happen. We wanted to share on the next slide just a graphic representation, because as we were out here collecting a lot of that data, going down the streets, the neighborhood CRA district, just look at the similarities between these two projects. If we could put that airport on the Longboat Key Island right there in the center, they're almost identical. So just, as we were going through and sharing the numbers, it's just interesting to see it from a graphic representation. So we just wanted to share that with you. The next slide, so we've got dedicated staff that's multidisciplinary, and what that means for the city of Destin is, because we're multidisciplinary, you don't need a lot of additional staff for these projects. This organization chart that we put together in our original proposal is modeled after the one that's working quite well in Longboat Key, and to add to that, we're actually under budget with the consultant fees every year. We're 3 years into the project. Every year we've come in under budget for that. So we think that that's a critical point. A little bit on myself, real briefly, 32 years experience, mostly high-profile, complex project. I've been involved with a lot of heavy FDOT projects as well, like the I-448 corridor in downtown, and major projects. I was asked by FDOT to come in and teach their engineering academy class for 6 years, which was a great opportunity, but with the lesson in that, or teaching the class, was both in construction and the design side. My role in this project is going to be making sure that we have the adequate staff and resources to successfully complete this project. We have a track record with being able to do that now. I'm estimating that my involvement for this project will range anywhere between 25 to 35%. As you know, with a project this size and scale, that will vary. There's certain operations and activities that don't require, and there's others that might be full-time roles. I'll be here to support Steve Maniaci, which will be our PM. Steve has got an extensive amount of background with utilities. He's actually started his career in the electric industry. He's been in it his entire career. He's familiar with underground, and he's worked with the communication companies as well in that role. He'll be your day-to-day contact point of person. I'll be available. Steve will be available. And another interesting thing about Steve is he's actually the co-chair for the FUCC statewide organization. 5 years ago, that's where he met Chad Swells with Gulf Power. They built a relationship that actually isn't from just the day-to-day operation of a project. We think that's important. These all come down to a lot of those relationships that are in place. Steve's excited to relocate. He'll be here on a day-to-day basis, so he will be relocated. I know he's excited about that. We're excited tonight to have on the next, we've got McKim and Creed with us, and we've got Brian Walker with McKim and Creed. We're glad to partner with them. We're going to be using them for a lot of the surveying and stuff like that. Why we thought Brian was just such a key for the city is he's got 17 years of experience as project manager and design. 9 of those are here with the city. So he's intimately familiar with yours. We thought that was important to have that type of person. He'll be supporting myself and Steve throughout the project. As you know, there's some data collection that's required as part of that original design that'll be performed by Gulf Power. We're very familiar. We've done a lot of projects. Every one of them have required that scope, so he'll be helping with that. In addition to that, any designs that the city may want to include as part of this project, we've got the resources and staff and availability to do that. Public outreach, we can't emphasize enough. We understand the importance in that role. However, it seems like every municipality that we work with, sometimes they have that already in place. I think y'all might have Catherine that helps with some of your public involvement. The town of Longboat Key has a similar thing. They do a lot of their own social media. So what we do is we just support whatever role, or, rather than us having a person here full time, we can work with you to find out what fits you best. Another thing of a concept of coffee with the contractor. So you can support local businesses throughout the duration of the project by hosting these events where the citizens can come in, business owners can come in, meet the contractor, the project team, talk through the process. I think that really keeps a lot of your constituents coming in here and asking a bunch of questions or feeling like they're in the dark. So it's a really nice thing to have, and it also supports some businesses along the way. We also have Juan Martinez, great individual. I know you'll enjoy working with him. He can come in and fill in a lot of the roles that we do on these projects. He's very familiar with the process. He's got over 17 years, and almost all of that is involved strictly with underground and conversion projects. He's worked on some of the larger ones on the east coast of Florida, as well as a few that we had talked about tonight. The next slide, we want to kind of walk through the process briefly with you. Like I said, in our original proposal package, we kind of went through the weeds a little bit in this. We just want to kind of briefly highlight some really critical roles as moving forward from the original design concept all the way through final. So we'll start with funding. As you know, that's the most critical and defining role on whether this project will advance. We've been involved with that a lot. That's on the next slide. You'll see a little. Steve and I are out on our projects all the time. I know I'm wearing a jacket right now. I'm boots on the ground. I'm 90% of my weeks spent in the field. I work a lot and really close with the contractors. So we see how these operations are done. We're very in tune with the latest operations and how those processes are due. I don't know how you can put together an estimate without having that day in, day out knowledge, because these things are evolving. As you can imagine, even directional bore operations have changed a lot over the years. More importantly, we have a successful and proven track record on one of the state's largest undergrounding projects, and we also have the same thing with one of the country's largest, going back to the Virgin Trains project. This graphic representation on that last slide, I'm sorry, that's a P6 Primavera schedule. Most of you are probably familiar. During the larger projects, you're going to track the construction activities. What we do is we load, even in the design side, we load the cost for that. And why we do that is so when we can come and meet with council and talk to you and tell you where we are with the project, you can also see how the cost curve, what the projections of cost are going to be, and the spin down. So this is a very helpful tool, and it works well with the funding department. Our next slide, another useful tool is the GIS. So when you're doing some of that methodology assessments in the project, you can track the general benefits, the EVUs, and things like this. This is just a snapshot of the northern end of our Longboat Key project, and you can see there we've got all the parcels. The next slide, we've basically queued up, I just want to know which properties are actually aerial. And we can dial into these things in so many different ways, but it's just one example here. And then I can click on an individual parcel. I can have it loaded with existing meter information, a lot of critical information that we need when we're working with Gulf Power and others, and including existing photos. So we're out there collecting that data anyway. We can get to some existing preconditions. Let's say someone says my driveway got cracked during construction. We can go back to those photos and say, absolutely, it was related to construction, because prior to that, driveway looked great. So just a nice feature to have. The next slide, we want to kind of focus a little bit on the utility design process and let you know we're very familiar with this. We've dealt with every one of the utility corridors. Steve and I both can attest to the fact that the power companies will not allow you to design their infrastructure. There's several reasons for that. If you look to the right of the slide, you'll see these are direct quotes from some of the other ones in the state, so you can be familiar with it. But if you can also look at the tariff, I think it's section 12.111 or 11.1 that specifically talks to that. So we just want to make sure that that's a known thing. The non-binding cost estimate that you're going to get from Gulf Power will actually include an engineering deposit. So think of it like we have the ability and the resources if they needed to be designed. We just know that that's not the way that they operate, and at the end of the day, they own that infrastructure, so they don't want someone else designing it because they own it at the end of the day, as well as the permit application will go in through the EOR, which is the utility company. So we do a lot of these projects. We're familiar with that. The next slide is kind of a little bit about that process. So we'll go out and do some what we call ground truthing, collect some of that data, but working with Gulf Power to identify the CIFs, which is basically the critical infrastructure facility locations, identifying that. That's really what we talked about earlier with Longboat Key, getting the sequencing and the phasing. A lot of that's developed by those critical infrastructure facilities throughout the corridor. Review of the preliminary design. This is where we can and we do make design modifications. If we see an opportunity to help save the city some money in that design, we do have the relationship with the utility companies to go in and modify that design, submit it back, and just so you know, 99.9% of the time we get those approved back from the utility companies because they know, and we don't send them something that we know that won't work. Another thing is easement locations. This spreadsheet here is just kind of a snapshot example, but easements are a big deal on these projects. So example would be in Longboat Key, we actually had one section that had over 258 easements originally. We're down to 39. We know when we can move them, we know when we can't. We know all of the offset requirements and adjustments. We're going to avoid every possible easement that we can, and then when we can avoid it, we have to go get it. We know how to talk properly with the resident, make sure we understand the process respectfully, and get that consent. The next slide is equally important with the utility design from Gulf Power is ATT Central Link and Cox Communication. So my first bullet on this was really to kind of emphasize the importance of knowing where that infrastructure is. And what I mean by that is, let's say we get Gulf Power's design, we lay it out, and we call in one of the utility companies one at a time and have them come in there and talk about that infrastructure. I think because we negotiate a lot of these, you've lost some of that negotiation powers. The reason being is they don't know where everything is. They're going to try to expand that infrastructure on your project, and we want to save you money by not letting them expand it. What we want to pay for is what they've got aerial, that's it. They're going to try that. It's very common on these projects. We're very familiar with that, so we just wanted to make sure whoever you select tonight, just make sure that they're defending that for you. Betterment and negotiations, that's really what that comes down to. And then the next item, the end user and field connections. We know now more than ever people are relying on their internet connection, right? People are working from home more, and the students, some of them aren't going to school and having to rely on that interconnection. In Longboat Key, Bel Air Beach, some of our projects, what we do right out the gate before we even start construction, we work with those carriers and get those splice leads, connections. We can do those connections right in the field. We're not waiting for the resident to have to call the utility company. We know they don't come out as quick as you need them to. So we're able to kind of do that right in the field. It goes very well with residents. That's a very important thing. And then Gulf Power, AT&T, Cox Communication, it's about relationships and understanding how they work. We're very familiar with their designs as well. procurement, some critical steps with that. So Gulf Power is going to provide you with a binding cost estimate. It's going to give you an option to have them do the work and your contractor do the work. We're very familiar with the CIAC and the GAF, the governmental adjustment factors, and how those credits look. What's important with that is sometimes with the credits now, they've increased over the years because there's a benefit to these undergrounding projects. We want to look at that. Sometimes it's cheaper for Gulf Power to do it, but you lose the schedule. You know, you might say, we want to get this thing done in under 8 years. So the contractor's we can drive that schedule. The power company, they might be gone for a couple of months. So, you know, there's some benefits. What we do is give you a comprehensive layout, exactly what that looks like and what those cost and a recommendation so you can review it and tell us what works best for the city. Same is true with the communication companies. Qualified contractor, we do not want, so on all of our projects so far, including Longboat Key, we talked to them and originally the plan was to go out for low bid. So let's do an RFQ process because you don't want to have a contractor coming in your city streets, working in your neighborhoods, your C or A districts or DOT right away, that don't do this work. Big mistake, they'll come in. So, you know, it's important for us to say we want to base that on their qualifications. We want to know that they worked in other communities and they also have to be approved to do this work for Gulf Power. So we're real familiar with that process. Another thing, the contractor interest and participation, what we do, we bring them in. We want them to meet the city staff, our staff, to say, here's what our expectations are when working in the city. We want to know what concerns they may have. What that does is it reduces their contingency. You don't know, and I've worked from a contractor side, if we don't know, we have to put contingency in because we don't know what the expectations and we don't want to lose money. We can take that out, and with this RFQ process, we can most of the time come in under what a low bid would anyway. So it's a very, very important thing. Designs, we don't know what the city's intentions may be with designs. We just wanted to let you know that we've got the resources to help you with whatever that may be, whether it's street light, landscaping, or design improvements. There's some opportunities here during the undergrounding process to do those at a little bit better, maybe a lower cost. We're familiar with a lot of municipalities that want to own their own streetlights, even the ones that want to do P3 partners. They can come in and fund those and do a payback over a period of time. And also now the big thing is these smart street poles where they come in and they got the fiber proliferation, they can kind of expand that. We're familiar with that. We're doing a lot of that in Longboat Key right now. So we can sit down with you and find out what option is best for the city. And then landscaping improvements. A lot of these, you know, it's really nice when you see all those poles go down, the aesthetic appeal. Do you want to do some landscaping, C or A, street lights? So we just wanted to assure you that we have those capabilities and we'd love to help you with whatever you might need. We're also familiar with LAP requirements. So if you do we don't know if you utilize LAP funding, but if you do, we're familiar with their documentation requirements during construction to support that effort. Another thing with the easements and directional bore on the next slide, we heard in your last, I think it was the last meeting or maybe the one before that where you just adopted the new ordinance for the directional bore. We love that. What we do, and we've been doing this for years, is we have a requirement that we put in our specification package. And what it is for is sequencing, planning, and layout. I want to know where you're going to work before you get out there. So we require a contractor in advance of that work. Let's lay it out, look at it so we can mitigate any concerns or problems with property. It's a very invasive construction effort if you don't know what you're doing. And you can see the picture to the right, just some of the precautionary, that's a piece of plywood to protect that owner's property while we're going in there. You know, you don't have to go in at every property, but where we do, we want to see so we can mitigate any concerns. We also wrote in our original proposal, and we understand seasonal residency. Every single one of our projects, I shouldn't say every single one of them, Virgin Trains isn't, but a lot of them are all beach. We live on the beach, so we're very familiar with seasonality. When you're planning and estimating these projects, you kind of have to understand that. And even like when you're working in the C or A district, it's just a different, maybe sometimes their seasons are a little bit outside your normal seasonal patterns. We're very familiar with that. Construction management and switching. Steve actually does a presentation on switching. He's very familiar with that process and does it at the FUCC and other state conferences. Gulf Power has certain expectations and there's timing with that. When you get this infrastructure in the ground, we want to get the poles out. There's a lot of timing and parts and pieces involved with that. We're just intimately familiar with that. And then staging. In Longboat Key, you got to imagine with the size, you know, it's going to be similar to this size project. You got a lot of materials coming in for this project, and if they're far away, that's a logistic problem. So we're very familiar with that process. We've got a 3.5 acre lot that's just off the island, And it's close enough, so what will basically, we know your land here is valuable, so you might not have a lot of opportunities, or maybe got some smaller where we can have these remote sites. We just want to kind of not, lose sight that the staging is something you're going to consider, and we're familiar with that process and the logistics. This next slide is a video that we wanted to share with you. So when we wrote the proposal package, we were in the process of undergrounding, sorry about the sand bite, and sorry about the quality. I know it's not the best, it was early, but this is just a video. We thought it would be interesting just to share with you, because this is the most exciting time of the project for us. We really get excited. I know Steve gets excited. This is when we get the happy face and the thumbs up emojis. We get the call from the mayors and the commissioners and the businesses. This is early in the morning. Obviously, a C8 district has a lot more pedestrian traffic, as you can imagine, but just the day and night difference of these projects once that get done. So we just thought it would be kind of nice to share that. Like I said, that was an early morning, about a 12-and-a-half-hour process for that, but you can just see it's a very tight corridor. You really can't imagine all the utilities that are involved in a corridor like that and getting through there. We completed that job well ahead of schedule. The construction timeline was incredibly quick because those business owners rely on having that traffic, so the planning in those areas are completely different. And when you're putting your estimates together, you got to keep in mind that you're not going to get the linear distances you get in the residential areas. In some days with the CRA, I might only be able to get a couple hundred feet versus 2,000 feet a day. So we're familiar with that process as well. The next slide, I know we're kind of getting close to the end. The reporting and documentation, we just want to emphasize we understand the requirements. When you're funding these projects, they're probably going to be subject to audits. We have had an audit on our Virgin Trains project. We have had periodic audits. We're expecting in Longboat Key, because it went out to referendum and then we got the bonds, that you're going to have to go in there and provide documentation to support that. We understand that. Red line, as-built. Quality control we take really serious with the company. This right here is just an image of the Delhi report of construction. You can see the level of detail, the contractor, the work efforts, and then we require a minimum of 2 pictures a day, sometimes more depending on the activities. They speak 1,000 words when you're trying to go back and look at something. So why Utility Consultants of Florida? Specific and similar type project, and we do a lot of these larger projects, but you're taking away the learning curve, but also these projects are going successful. We're ahead of schedule in Longboat Key. We're under budget. We haven't utilized contingency. Those are important factors. Funding and finance experience. We know we're probably going to have to be heavily involved during the assessment methodology and the funding. We want to work well with those groups. We've got a history of doing that. We understand that process. We take that serious. Understanding the scope. Whoever wrote the RFQ package did a great job of outlining all the requirements and scope items. And if you look in our original package, you can see that we identified each and every one in a matrix because we wanted to assure you that we're familiar with each and every one of those items and who would be responsible in doing those tasks. Responsiveness and transparency. I'm a phone call away. We're responsive to emails. Steve answers. We just want to let you know we are a very responsive group. We take that seriously. We don't want you waiting to get an answer. We're going to try to get those answers to you right away. And then we understand the public outreach, the communication, and the budget. Proven track record of bringing these projects in under budget. We've got smaller projects, but I think when you're dealing with a larger project, to have that underneath and be able to say that one's on budget, I think, smaller project and a larger day and night differences. And then multidisciplinary staff. So just as important it is to bring these projects under budget, we feel it's the same importance to do it on our fees as well. And then commitment. We're committed to the staff and the success of this project. So we'd love to hear from you and answer any questions you might have tonight. Thanks again so much. I know it's been a long night for you. Wish I'd have brought pizza.
Yeah, you got some bonus points for that. At this time, is there any questions here at the dais? Anybody? Go ahead, Dr. Ramswell.
Thank you so much for the presentation. What is your expected time frame? How do you see this project evolving and over what period of time?
Well, I've heard, 8 to 10 year. I think it should be sooner than that. I think what happens is your first year or so, you're trying to develop how it's going to get funded. You got to get the reference. So that, we don't know what that time frame may be. As far as the construction, there's a lot of ways to improve that. Every single project, like I said, my history is complex projects, bringing them into their schedule, the big I-448 corridor. So that's what we specialize in. How do we get these things built quicker? So it's going to depend on the contractor, the resources. Those are some of the questions we asked during that procurement process. You can get these projects advanced. You just have to know how to properly sequence the work. You can't just go, can't say I'm going to have it done in 3 years and have them all out through the island. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. It'll be a logistic nightmare. But I can promise you that we're very good about sequencing that work to get this thing done sooner. I do think you can do it under 8 years. But a lot of that will depend on how the legal process works and some of the funding. We can't control that, but we're familiar with the process. I can tell you this, you won't be waiting long for us to get the information that they need. We're very quick and responsive.
And then additionally, obviously, 98 here is a major thoroughfare, and any impacts to traffic are going to be severe and tick people off, frankly. As someone mentioned earlier, we've had construction going on for, it seems like forever, so people are wary of that. How do you mitigate the impact on traffic during the project?
That's a great question, and it's an easy one. So Longboat Key, 10 miles. We're doing 2 sections concurrently. Remember, 5.5, we wanted to get it down to 3, so we are working concurrent. The thing about that, keep in mind, what you're experiencing now in your residence is closures. You're doing full widening. We have a moving operation. Those directional bore operations aren't day in, day out. We're moving and progressing through the project, so it's not the same as what you're experiencing now. I'm not saying you won't have impacts, but we do a lot of these projects, and we're familiar with that process. So I think it's just the planning. We understand the DOT requirements. They're going to have specific standard index requirements for the closures, but just keep in mind those operations are moving. They're not, stationary for months after months after months, and that's the difference. Right now, you're closing down building lanes. You're going to have 6, 7, 8 months, so you do have impacts. This project's a little less impact than you think if they're planned right. But keep in mind, it's a moving operation, so you're not tying up the same like what you're experiencing right now.
So about how many projects of this scale do y'all undertake at one time? How much, and what I'm getting at essentially is how much time would you be devoting, time and energy to our project?
Well, so Longboat Key, we're ahead of schedule. We're about halfway through, so I expected about another 1.5 years, 2 years of construction is where we're at right now. My availability will increase significantly with that. So by that time, you'll probably have the funding and get ready to construction. Steve's here full time. He'll be here day in, day out as this project's progressing. But so right now, my commitment is Longboat Key. I'm their PM for that project, so I'll fulfill that commitment that I've made. Outside of that, we're also working on Bradenton Beach. We're helping them with some other areas in CRA. Give you an example, we were doing Bel Air Beach, Bradenton Beach, Longboat Key all at the same time. And have to use a lot of extra resources. Almost think a project like this, you're going to need a significant staff. If you do these projects and you know how they work and understand, we're not going to put more people to the project than what you need because it's just costing you money. Like I said, multidisciplinary staff, so we can handle several projects. I think your next year is going to be progressing to get the data collection in place for what that infrastructure looks like. What are those estimates? And that we do, we're ready to, we could start tomorrow. So we've got the resource and availability to come in here tomorrow. Steve will lead that effort. I'll be here supporting him with the estimates, the methodology assessment. We're a team. We all rely on each other. There's certain things and parts and pieces that we all work together on.
Mark doesn't know, but I already found a place where I can keep my boat.
And then one question for Mr. Walker. I know you were here and you worked with Tetra Tech for a while. Did you do any other project aside from boardwalk efforts?
Yeah, appreciate the time. Brian Walker. Some of you may not know me. I've been down in Orlando for about 6 years, but I'm a senior project manager with McKim & Creed. Our office is over in Pensacola, so we are local here to the Emerald Coast. I worked at a firm, Tetra Tech, that was one of the primary civil engineering consultants for the city at that time. So I was involved in a significant amount of civil engineering projects for the city during that time frame. Some of those projects, the more significant projects, were the reconstruction of Scenic 98, all three phases, the expansion of Crystal Beach Drive, the reconstruction of Mountain Drive and Main Street, both of which had components of utility undergrounding, overhead utility undergrounding. I know y'all were recently talking about the update to the Stormwater Master Plan recently. I was a part of the team that helped put together the original Stormwater Master Plan in 2004, and implemented many of the projects that came out and were identified in that master plan to help solve some of the flooding issues around the city. So the boardwalk you mentioned. And I think most importantly, for 3 or 4 years, I was actually contracted directly with the city to be a part of their development review committee. So I was actually reviewing other consultants' plans for compliance with the city's land development code.
Do you remember what years that was?
Specifically for those, it was probably 2005, 2006,
Ish,
somewhere
okay.
in there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, appreciate it.
And
Thank
really,
you.
thank all of y'all for coming tonight and bearing with us as the evening wore on.
Steve, I know you have some questions.
Yes, sir. You ready for me? I'm ready.
Yep, go ahead.
The other Steve.
The other Steve.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, stick together, right? Mark, thank you for your presentation. I have a series of questions for you. Let me start off. You pretty much answered this, but I just want to confirm something. I know you said Steve would be able to relocate here. He'd be the day-to-day contact. But from availability of a lead and other key personnel whom the company will assign to the city's project, will they be here for the duration? Would they make a commitment to be here 2-4 years? We're not going to have revolving doors of PMs?
No, we don't believe in that anyway, because I think that, anytime you have to pass the torch, you have it for that reason, because you're changing staff. So no, we're committed to the project. And if you look at our original proposal package, I know we didn't have a specific slide, but we actually wrote down a matrix with the utilization of staff and the people that would be there. So we're committed to that. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. I'd like you to describe your understanding of what's involved in the city's undergrounding project.
Well, it's a massive project, and, hopefully we kind of walk through a lot of that information tonight, but, the collection of data, you're going to get a non-binding cost estimate so that we can initiate the design for the Gulf Power. We understand the collection of data that's going to be needed to advance that design. We're very familiar with the procurement process, the funding process that's going to be needed for the project. So we know it's a big project, but like I said, we live and breathe these projects. We're passionate about it. We really like doing these projects, so we're very familiar with that process. What's unique is that our projects are specific to a lot of differences. So the ones that we do in Pinellas County, we're limited to the amount of work that you can do. The ones that we do for FPL and others, that's full blown. We're doing the conversions to the meter of the house. We're pulling the wire. We're doing everything. So we're familiar with both processes. The same will be true for Gulf Power for this project. NextEra is actually the new owner, and they're going to be adopting a lot of the policies that are currently in place with FPL. So that's a positive, because that's a lot of our involvement. So we're very familiar with their processes and their tariff requirements.
Okay, moving on. Thank you. Let me go through this next one. What is your expectation of who, as between the utilities and the contractors, the city team and the contractors engaged in the city, is going to be performing work in executing the project?
I'm so sorry to ask you. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. It's convoluted. What is your expectation of who, as between the utilities and their contractors, the city team and the contractors engaged by the city, is going to be performing what work in executing the project?
So let me answer that by saying that, again, we're going to come to you with that recommendation as to what's your best approach. 90% of the time we go with a contractor. Contractor's going to do all the work. We coordinate the efforts. It's going to be, you're going to AT&T, Cox Communications, CenturyLink are going to have involvement for the project. Contractor will schedule that work concurrently with that. We understand there's offset requirements, different things, but we're very, very familiar with that process. So I want to assure you that. But the contractor on a Longboat Key project, perfect example, we're doing everything. The only thing we're not doing is for Comcast, they're pulling their own fiber and doing their own splicing for obvious reasons. Other than that, we're installing everything.
Okay, let me move along. Thank you. Although final decisions haven't been made, you should reasonably assume that the City of Destin's underground project will require some bond financing. What experience do you have in supporting any bond financing efforts?
I think we're highly familiar with that process. We've been involved with that for years with Longboat Key, which is very similar. I think we have around 8,700 parcels, and I think here you have somewhere around 11,000. So a lot of that assessment methodology, the cost that's going to be tied down to that, is going to go into how those benefits are applied to the property owners. So we're familiar. We've been to court. We had to testify for the bonds that were issued in Longboat Key. I was personally at court, so again, Bryant Miller Olive was the attorney representing the city in that, and I went to court, so I can't emphasize enough, we're very familiar with that process and understand the expectations. We have history with that. And they're going well, the estimates are doing well, so.
Okay, let me move along, and thank you. Has your company or any member of your team ever been involved in any litigation relating to underground projects, contracts relating to the construction or installation of underground facilities, or to the management of such underground projects?
None.
Okay. Next one, two more. Has your company or any member of your team ever been removed from a project or told to stop work on a project by a client?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And finally, has your company ever been sued for a breach of contract?
No.
And just as a follow-up, last question, whose idea was it to have coffee with a contractor? I think that's a novel idea. It's a great approach.
It's actually being utilized in West Palm Beach. I think that was the original area that they tried it. It's a really great concept, because I know we go to a lot of, commissioner and city council meetings, so we understand the expectations. I've been there and seen and witnessed myself, where you have constituents that are coming in and just, we don't know what's going on. We're not familiar. We know there's websites, we know there's flyers and brochures, but sometimes that communication's not there. So we're very familiar with that process and, understand that. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for you and your team for your time and answering the questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And before we move on to our attorney's questions, because I'm not going to forget him this time, Dr. Ramswell does have one additional question. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to ask this question because one of the other candidates actually has a chart. They noted that pursuant to Section 471.023 Florida statutes, a business organization or other persons practicing under a fictitious name offering engineering services to the public must be qualified by an engineer licensed under the same code. And they just noted that they had that, and I'm wondering, do you guys have that? And if not, is there some reason why you might not have to?
Well, I'm glad they pointed that out, because there's been a lot of confusion. Steve can tell you firsthand. We're actually, I'll let you kind of share it in a minute, but what you want to be careful for, and what we emphasize on the slide, you cannot design these projects. And there's been some misconceptions of people going in and actually designing it as if they could for the utility company, only to find out later that they can't. That's what Steve just experienced. He had to go in there and tell the client, we're sorry you paid for the engineering. The utility company will own that design. So there is no engineering that's involved with that. These projects come down to project management. That's what they're involved. And I can speak to this. We're making modifications. We're licensed. We're insured. We're just like every other normal company. We're not going through anything or missing anything with requirements. We're doing a lot of projects, and what's interesting is we may be one of the smaller firms, but we're working with some of the largest clients and doing some of the largest projects. So I hope that kind of, registers, is that we do have a, Virgin Trains they have very few consultants that they do. They had to do a lot of that work in-house. We're one of the few consultants that are actually even brought into that project to help with that. So I'm not sure what that means, but I can promise you that we're doing business. We've been doing it for a while. We are a new business. I worked for some of the largest firms in the country. I've worked for 3 large firms, so we understand that process. A lot of these companies, that's where you get a lot of your work, is a lot of the design stuff. These projects don't require, you're not going to be designing the power companies, you're not going to be designing the AT&T, Cox Community CenturyLink. They will not allow you to design those. What you need to have on the staff is people that build them and know how to manage those, because that's what it's going to come down to. And we do extensive constructability reviews. I just want to point that out, because what we specialize in addition, and we're doing a lot of with Virgin trains, 240-mile corridor, we are working with some of the major, this isn't just, a 96 count fiber running through a neighborhood. These are major hauls that go from Miami all the way up to Washington, D.C. So, we have a lot of familiarity with that process, and again, it just comes down to the management on those projects, so.
So I guess when I look at this, and it's, the key phrase may be offering engineering services, and you're more of the project manager, overseer, putting everything together, and someone else is doing that engineering phase.
We're a professional services firm the reason that we started our own firm was because what we wanted to do was undergrounding projects. This is what we do. So I just want to kind of point out that, we've got quite a few of them. We're the prime on several of those projects, and we've been picking up a lot of work. You're not going to be able to go in there and design them. There's no design requirements. If they were, we would love to have that opportunity. We'd be able to do that. We just know it's not needed. If that changes, we'll probably introduce that to our team. Right now, there's no need to have that and charge a client for something that's not needed, so.
Excellent, thank you all so much, and.
Speaking to the utility, they have to have an approved design engineer company to do those for them. And even them have to be approved by the utility. They don't just let them come in and make decisions on their assets. It's their structure. And
I understand. I just wanted to clarify, since that was something that was.
well, believe me, they'll try to do so. They try to, we can do it cheaper. Well, yeah, you can do it cheaper, but you're not fixing my stuff cheaper because you want to save costs. They're going to do it as according to what their standards. And like I said, you have to be approved engineers firm that's going to work with the utility company that's working with them.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Shep?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Ramswell. Good evening, Mark.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing better than I deserve, thank you. My name is Chef Wright. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for about 28 years. I've worked in energy, mostly electric stuff, in Florida for not quite 40 years. I've been working on undergrounding stuff for 30 of those 40 years. I just have a few questions for you. Following on a question that Council Member Menschel asked you about your understanding of the project, I think it might help if you would elaborate a little bit about your understanding of your role in coordinating all the utilities that are going to be converted. Because I think we got CenturyLink, CenturyLink, Cox, AT&T, and Gulf all on the polls. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
So a couple of great, by the way, I know you were involved with Longboat Key kind of in the earlier stages, so I know that they really like it. I think we had some questions about some of the earlier CIAC and the GAM credits that you helped us with. So it's nice finally meeting you in person. The projects that we're on, every single one of them have carriers on the pole. So Gulf Power is going to have, like you said, AT&T, CenturyLink, and Cox Communication on them. Every one of those projects, we're able to take the designs that we get from Gulf Power. And remember, like I said, when you get those designs from Gulf Power, we lay them out. I can tell you, Steve and I are going to go down, we have to do that assessment anyway. We know what's on what pole. What you don't want to do is have that utility company come and tell you, well, I've got to get down to the end of the street. We only need to put back what they have, and that's a big problem. So we're familiar with that. But in every one of those projects, we do the oversight on every bit of it. We review their designs, we work with them, we coordinate them, we get them off the poles. Another thing to point out, getting them off the poles is no easy task. We've got a history with that. Longboat Key, major project, so in phase one, I've got everything off of an entire southern end, that first phase, and everything's off the poles already. We haven't even got FPL in there to come off the poles yet. I got everybody off. Got Comcast, Frontier, we're all off those poles. We're used to that, so I just want to make sure that that's a good question. Hopefully we spoke to it, or just in case we didn't, we understand getting them off that poles is critical, because the last thing you want is Gulf Power in here and the communication lines are still hanging on those poles. They'll even cut them and leave those guys there. So we're completely, I should have said that, but we are so familiar with that. That's my big pet peeve. I want them off the pole. So we're working with them far in advance. Before they even finish their designs, we're already working to have that plan in place.
And it happens on every project.
They're usually the last ones to get drawn onto there. You gotta stay on top.
Verizon Fios to come here and bury their lines too.
Well, I don't know about that, Mr. Boyce. No, I'm not gonna say that.
You saw
No, I'm
that,
not gonna say that.
and that slide that we shared with you, that's what we wanted to kind of emphasize. It's not so much doing the project, but seeing it come to fruition, right? You know, that's the important thing. There was a lot of communication companies on that line, so that was a very fast-track project. We went in there and kind of knocked that out real quick. That we take a lot of pride in getting these things done. That you don't need to waste a lot of time and effort. You just need to have a clear plan and know what the process is.
Following on a couple of things you just said, did you participate with the other longboat attorneys in negotiating the contracts with the cable company and the telecom for getting their stuff off the poles and into conduit?
Yes, sir. I was involved in that process, actually, not only the estimates, but actually the negotiations with it. We're still having some negotiations with the northern end where we're doing something different. And what I mean by that is we actually found that it's almost a third of it, because Frontier on that project has such a large, they're a large organization. They have these master contracts. Their contractor can bore that for $6 a foot. I mean, you're not going to get a contractor that can do it in that type of, the northern end, the tight congestion with all these existing utilities. So we kind of said, if we could do it for that, maybe we'll cut them loose. The big concern is, what you don't want is you don't want a bunch of people going into your project. Maybe, Steve, that was more of your question, is we understand getting in a neighborhood, one and done. We don't want to go in there and get Gulf Power's infrastructure and then come back and do Cox and AT&T. We structure that. We don't want to be on property more than we need to be, so we're very mindful of that, especially when you're working in CRA districts and the DOT corridor. You do not want to have an unorganized plan where you're putting Gulf Power in, and you're coming back months later, and we come in there with a very sequential plan and sequence of that work. We understand how important that is.
Has Longboat, did they do the neighborhoods first, or did they do GMD first?
We did them concurrently because, like I said, after Hurricane Irma, those commissioners wanted to wrap it up.
So my question is, have you gotten to the point of actually pulling poles out of the ground?
We have not. Okay. We're in the process, so right now, we've got all of the infrastructure in phase one. They broke it out differently. It was originally 5, I think, when you were there. It's 4 now. We condensed it. All the infrastructure is in phase 2. In GMD, there's some sections in the neighborhood left, all of phase 1. So we're actually in the process of the switching order right now. Those poles will be coming out. Right now, the schedule is December. We'll start taking the poles out, which is a way ahead of schedule, the original schedule.
Where was the video you showed us with pulling the poles out at night and then the beautiful walk down Main Street the next day?
Bradenton Beach.
Okay,
That's
thanks.
our Bradenton Beach project. That's a CRA. We thought it was, kind of neat to show because it just happened to be the timeline of that, the CRA district, and we know you have the 2 CRA districts here, so we thought that was interesting.
What you mentioned Juan Martinez. What projects on the east coast of Florida did he work on?
Jupiter Island.
Okay.
2 sections in West Palm Beach. They originally, had that as one big project. Now they kind of dissected it.
You said
out.
West Palm. Do you mean Palm Beach?
Palm Beach.
Good. Okay. Oh, good. And who is he working for at that time?
So at that time, he was actually working for Wilco, one of the contractors that doing that. So he's very experienced with the actual construction work. He could jump on a boring machine if something goes wrong. That's where he started. So he will. If something's going wrong, he'll be on it.
Thanks. And do you have a sense, based on as much as you know today, of proportionally how much trenching versus how much boring you think you might do here?
I don't like trenching because it's invasive.
I don't either.
So I would say that, right now in Lombok Keys, like I said, you can look at those images and see how identical, about 95% of it's done. There's very little trenching. You don't really have to. Sometimes if you're going up to a house, but that's such a minimal operation. But as far as the main infrastructure, the feeder and we're all directional boring.
What I can see after riding through, there's going to be mostly boring.
Right. That's all the questions.
Not a lot of open area for trenching.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mark. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Shep. Did you have one other question? Go ahead.
So when y'all talk about boring, because clearly I have never done this before, are you essentially going sideways underground and then like pushing or feeding the lines through, or how do you explain to me how that works?
So it actually, I wish I had a video to show you. It's remarkable when I started my career in the directional board now. So you're going to have, and this is important when you have a home. So you're out in the street. All of it's done by you know, depending on how many conduits you're gonna have in, we're gonna go in with it's a bore head. It's basically gonna go through there and tunnel, gonna go out through the other side, grab the conduit, pull it back. So when we go into the, you know, up towards somebody's meter box, that's a little bit more invasive because you're going to somebody's yard. We can shoot those things, I'm not kidding, within a hole that big right up to the meter base. That's how accurate these bores are now. In Bel Air Beach, very large lots, all concrete driveways. You had small windows. It's pretty remarkable how you can drive those in and the technology.
Shovel on the ground. I have run boring machines I've worked on the line crew for 20 years. And you can hit a shovel with it. You can monitor it, come right up out of the ground, you can hit that shovel. Wherever you stick that spade, you can hit it.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Any further questions from Ms. Overdeer or Steve?
No, I'm good. I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right. Well, at this point, thank you guys very much for coming and sharing with us your presentation. And we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll have public comment and discussion amongst our council members before we grade. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
All right, thank you. 5-minute break, everyone. I got the go-ahead. Welcome back, everybody. Now, for this portion of the meeting, just to explain to everybody what we're going to do. We're going to have public comment, if we have any. And then we're going to have discussion amongst the council members. And then, once we have that discussion, I'm going to ask you to score the presenters, just who your first pick, who your second pick, and who your third pick is. Once you've done that, then we're going to verbally give our scores one by one, and then we'll take a short break so Ray can tabulate the scores, and then we'll have an announcement. If perhaps there's a tie, what we'll do is we'll just take everyone will rescore their first and second picks, not a third pick, and hopefully that would break a tie. And if we have a tie after the second go-around, then someone will have to make a motion for their favorite project, and then we'll take a vote. So,
Mayor, isn't it more about ranking and not
Yes, you're
necessarily giving points?
no,
Ranking.
who your first pick is, your second pick, and your third pick, okay? In that order. So, at this point, I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the room tonight that would like to make a comment based on what they've heard or seen? Seeing no public comments, I'm going to close the public comment period. James, you had no one queued up?
That's correct, sir, no one.
And Ray, you had nothing to read, no text or messages. So at this point, now it's time for just discussion. If you want to say anything you think's important, this is the time. Did anybody have anything they'd like to say, or would you all rather get right to the scoring part of the meeting? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Chef, I just had a question for you because I just thought that this matrix that was provided by one of the candidates was pretty interesting in terms of, you know, who had what, et cetera. Is the understanding correct that you don't necessarily need to have a licensed surveyor or landscape architect or general contractor as the project manager? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
Kyle, what do you think, boss?
Well, I'm not an attorney, but I think the purpose of that was showing that they had everything in-house and could facilitate the entire project with their own in-house people. I'm not too sure it was a qualification.
that's sort of what I thought too,
versus
but I
others.
just want to,
But give us your opinion.
This is the joint opinion of myself and your city attorney, but we concur. We don't think that you have to have those things to be a project manager, or to provide, and it's more specifically in our case, to provide the services that we're asking people to provide. I mean, Mr. Porter, in the eyes of the city of Longboat, town of Longboat Key, is the project manager for their project. I forget which one of the nice people from CPWG is a project manager and an engineer. You have to be a professional engineer to sign and seal an engineering document. You know, you have to be a professional surveyor licensed by the state of Florida to sign a survey. But I think that Mr. Walker brings the survey and the PE, at least the PE, and I think the survey, or if there's another surveyor, to the team. But in terms of being able to actually manage the work, it's.
okay, I just
don't believe
wanted
it's
to clarify.
I don't believe it's legally necessary. We don't believe it's legally necessary.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions while we have everybody here at the table? Seeing none at this time, I'd like for y'all, go ahead, Dr. Ramswell.
Is it appropriate to ask you, Chef, what your thought is? Or are you going to be weighing? I mean, we value your insight and experience, but I'm not sure
That's not
what's
fair.
appropriate. And I don't want to legally put you in a bind, but
I don't know if it legally puts me in a bind or not, but I would cheerfully accept the suggestion, the advice from the mayor on that one. It does put me in a very difficult situation.
I understand. I understand.
My son and I, when we're talking about sports bets, we say, gun to your head, what would you do? If you did that to me, I'd tell you what I think, but I'd rather not.
I understand. Thank you.
I don't think, that's not fair to you, Shep. I appreciate your legal advice, but this is a decision for our council, and we had.
That's right.
We
That's
had
exactly
three
right.
really good presentations from three really good companies, so now it's just gonna come down to, each individual council member, picking their first choice, their second choice, and their third choice, and then we'll tabulate those, and may the, winner take all, basically. So, first of all, I just want to make sure that everybody's had ample time. Mr. Menschel, Ms. Overdeer, have you guys good to go for me to do the roll call? Mr. Morgan, Mr. Destin, are you guys ready? Mr. Marler, Dr. Ramswell, are you ready to go? Well, we'll just start with Dr. Ramswell, and, well, okay, I'll start the other end.
Mr. Mayor,
Hold on one second.
just before you start, if you will just give me a couple minutes just so that I can clear my conscience. I just want to make sure everyone knows that each of you is going to need to have a number 1 choice, a number 2 choice, and a number 3 choice in order for this to work. So you can't just pick a 1 or a 1 and a 2. We need you to pick all 3 in order, 1 being the one you think best fits the city of Destin.
So, no zeros tonight.
Okay, I'm trying to understand the process we're doing now.
You're going to vote for your first, second, and third choice in that manner.
Oh, so we're not turning it into Mr. Bailey and tabulate.
No, all he's going to tabulate is how many, what companies got 1s, 2s, and 3s. And the person that comes out on top will win the bid. All each individual member is going to do is to pick his top choice, second choice, and the third choice. And we're going to verbalize those because it's a public meeting. We're doing it through webinar, and Ray just needs to write it down. Kyle?
I just want to make sure that everybody writes down their scores on their evaluation sheet prior to giving any verbal responses as to that, so that we have independent selections by each council member.
And put your name on that sheet as well.
Yes,
and the
please.
date. I'm not going to fill mine out because I'm not voting at this time.
Maybe later.
All right. And just to make sure that Dr. Ramswell doesn't think I'm picking on her tonight, we're going to start with Mr. Morgan. I know, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, sir.
This is in order 1, 2, and 3. 1 would be Utility Consultants of Florida, 2 would be CPWG, and 3 would be HBK Engineering.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Destin.
This is ranking 1, 2, and 3. First rank is CPWG Madrid. Number 2 is Utility Consultants of Florida, LLC, and number 3 is HBK Engineering, LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Mr. Marler.
1, 2, and 3. 1 would be Utility Consultants of Florida, CPWG Madrid for number 2, and HBK for number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Overdeer.
Okay, first is UCF, second is CPWG, and third is HBK.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Menschel.
Yes, sir. My first is Utility Consultants of Florida, second is CPWG Madrid, and third is HPK Engineering. And it's written down.
Thank you, Mr. Menschel. Dr. Ramswell.
Ranked 1, Utility Consultants of Florida. Ranked 2, CPWG. Ranked 3, HBK Engineering.
Okay, thank you, council members. We will take another short 5-minute break to allow Ray Bailey and our attorney to look over the results, and we'll make an announcement as soon as they are in. Ray and Kyle, you just let me know when you're ready. I'm not going to put a time limit on it. In the meantime, visitation hours are open.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hold on 1 second, Steve. Mr. Mitchell, did you have something?
Yes, sir. I just had a question. Do you all need Skip and I to turn these documents into you?
We will get that.
Yes. Save those documents, and they need to be turned in to Ray? Yes, turn them into Ray Bailey tomorrow if possible.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Has everybody, all our staff members and council members received a copy of the results? Steve and Skip, you'll just have to hear them over the microphone. According to the Utilities Undergrounding Project Management Score Sheet, RFQ 20-03-CD, the tally sheet, HBK Engineering LLC came in third, CPWG Madrid came in second, and Utilities Consultants of Florida LLC is first in the selected company. At this time, I need to entertain a motion. Mr. Destin?
Yes, Mayor, I'm going to move that staff enter negotiations with Utility Consultants of Florida LLC and report back to council with a contract to consider.
Second.
I got a motion, I have a second. Is any discussion?
I would just like to thank all the candidates, and for me, it was a very difficult decision between my top two, and it's just tough. You got to pick someone, and I really want to thank everyone for coming. Tremendously impressive credentials from everyone.
Yes, and I appreciate the council taking the time in the consideration in making this selection. This is the most aggressive and expensive and long-term project this city's ever attempted or beginning to attempt, and it's an honor that all the members of this council are critical components of the beginning of this project. So I have a motion and I have a second, and without further ado, we'll start with you, Dr. Ramswell.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Overdeer.
Yes.
Mr. Marlar.
Yes.
Mr. Destin.
Yes.
And Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous, so moved. And I think at this time, meeting adjourned.